You dropped the camera?
Okay,
No.
you guys, we're live. We're live
Don't
now.
hit record yet. All right, there you go.
All right.
Well, ain't no telling. Okay.
So we're live now. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
All right, so we've been live for a while now.
All right.
Okay. Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi to
Hello.
all. Okay, I'll begin now. Hi to all of God's children and everyone else. I'm Marjorie M.J. Janvier, your host, and this is The Breakdown. This is brought to you by Tehuti Forever. Ring the bell, share, like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment. The Breakdown is bringing you information through Christians and Kemetic beliefs. Let's begin with a word from Tehuti Forever.
Hello, my name is Tehuti Forever. This is my channel. I like to learn about people's cultures, belief systems, and religions. So I created this channel just to get information out there so that people can listen and learn and just have a good understanding of other people's perspectives. I'm the author of Quantum Philosophy, Meanings, Answers, and Promises. Let's see. Let's get there. Okay, so you can purchase the book. Basically, anyone online, you can Google it, purchase it, and it'll be sent out. I'm a father of three. I have three boys. They're my pride and joy. And I'm just here right now. Today, we're going to do Christian versus Kemet. You know, did Kemet start the concepts that are found in Christianity?
Okay, now let's begin with our introductions. We have Robert Stewart. He's a Christian. And would you tell us about yourself and your accolades?
Hello, ma'am. My name is Robert Stewart. I'm in darkness here. I've been a Christian all of my life, except for a few years where I had to find myself. We've all gone through that adult process. I've got a father of three, grandchildren is 10. I'm an old soldier. I served in Desert Storm, and I'm a leadership type of guy, and I'm a deacon in my church.
And next we have Brian Smith. And I understand you're a rapper. I'd like to hear more about you. Tell us about yourself.
Well, like you said, I'm a rapper. I mean, I do a lot of other things. I'm also an artist. I do tattoos on the side a little, not a whole lot. Yeah, basically, I'm a Christian, minister at my church, a youth minister. So I talk to a lot of the inner city children, and try to get them on the straight and narrow. That's pretty much it. I'm a father of two.
Brian just called me and woke me up, which is good.
Good. God, give it to me. I'm calling this to wake you up.
Yeah, I gotta forget my friend. He's a little old school.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for telling us about yourself. And we'll begin with the questions. And the first question is, does Christianity come from Kemet?
No.
Okay. Are you addressing that to Christians, ma'am?
Yes, I'm addressing that to Christians.
Okay. The answer to that is, in a word, no. And the reason for that is very simple. Christianity cannot become a religion until Christ actually lives on earth. Okay? Now, I will say this, because William and I have had discussions in the past. A lot of things that he says, well, this God is like Jesus, and this is like Jesus, and this is like Jesus. That was still not follow that Christianity came out of it, no matter how something is like. Because what a lot of people have not factored in is the fact that God was attempting to tell people about himself from time immemorial. from the start of time. So all of these things where he says, well, like the sun does a constellation move of the cross and all like that, that was God trying to get people's attention, and people never did follow. So eventually he went to Abraham, and Abraham followed all through the Bible stories, and believed God. So he counted it for him righteousness. When he believed God, it started the whole chain of events for Judaism, and then Christianity came out of that. And what we have to remember is Jesus Christ is an actual person. He actually lived. He actually fulfilled prophecy. He actually was real. And so then Christianity could become a religion once he actually died and revived, resurrected again, and rose again from the dead. There is no Christianity, no matter how much of a coincidence of things, because in times past, God was trying to talk to people and they didn't quite fully understand. And so they added things that they thought was right, and it wasn't right. So God had to start the whole chain of events as you read in the Bible.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense from what you're saying. Did Christianity come before Kemet, or did Kemet come before Christianity?
There was a religion called Kemet that came, it died out, okay? And then there's religions called Judaism, there was religions called Zoroastrianism, and all these other things. But the main thing is Christianity cannot start until Christ actually lives.
Hold on. The
and
question,
that's the key.
So
Christianity only started. Yeah. Christianity actually only started 2,000 years ago. Okay, even though we trace our roots back through Father Abraham, which is 4,000 years ago, and even though we actually trace our roots further back than that to Noah, and then of course back to Adam and Eve.
all
okay.
Right.
But
So,
Christianity as a religion cannot start until there's actual Jesus Christ.
Okay, can someone answer this question? Which came first, Kemet or Christianity?
Kemet.
Oh, okay.
But Kemet has nothing to do with Christianity, and Christianity has nothing to do with Kemet. It did not come out of Kemet.
Right.
Okay, does anyone else want to
And
answer?
also, and that's the reason why I wanted to make sure, the actual first religion, as the Kemet brother, his Williams start, is actually witchcraft, which starts spirituality, this African spirituality, which has devolved into like voodoo, and then there's witchcraft, like has devolved into what we have in the North American continent with Californian covens of witches and that sort of thing. So just so you can see how the whole spirituality that people talk about has gone into many different forms, of which William, according to his teacher from our last conversation, is talking about African spirituality, which, you know, water has a certain spirit, and then all of the other things. But all of that comes from the oldest religion, which is called the craft or witchcraft in all its many forms. Okay.
It's actually, go ahead. I ain't gonna cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I wanted people to understand spirituality is something that happened because, of course, you interact with spirits, even like when you dream or whatever. And so spirituality is, you can go to the spirit world, but the problem that you have is you're going to the spirit world and you're not sure whether you're talking to good spirits or bad spirits, because they're both there. We call them angels and demons, okay? Angels are God's messenger, demons are the fallen angels. And then they may tell you anything. For example, if you call the California psychic line, you're probably talking to people that are talking to demons. And so, of course, the demons know your secret because the demon is in the spirit world and he saw you whisper something to your mom. And so when your mom passed and then you call the California psychic line, the demon tells him, well, tell him that, you know, him and his mom was talking on the 5th of July while they was eating hot dogs. And voila, you believe because it's true. Because the spirit world saw you talking to your mom and even hear the little secrets that you was whispering in between. And so this is what shows people some fallacies, and they start believing some fallacies. I like to pick on religions that we're not, a person that I'm talking to is not actually believing, to show them what I'm talking about, because I would hate to like pick on your particular belief system. But you have to be careful, because spirituality means you're actually going to the spirit world, basically, I'm going to say, without a spirit guide. And, you know, I've listened to like Coast to Coast, for example, is notorious for this, where people call in to the host and they have spirit guides. You don't know whether that spirit guide has your back or not. Just like when you meet a person on the street, you don't know whether he has your back or not. You have to see over time. And you never know, because spirit world is tricky. They can turn on you because they don't really care. And so I really want, that's the reason why we're so passionate about Christianity, because here we have somebody who actually cares. And Christianity is now talking about the Holy Spirit, which is my guide whenever I have to deal with the spirit world. And actually the Holy Spirit tells us not to deal with that, deal with the real world. And then we're actually just sealed unto God as a believer. And then all my spiritual world is taken care of.
I see. So, you know, we also have Michael Miller that's here, and he's an agnostic atheist. And I know he's dealing with his son, his daughter, one of his children, but we want him to chime in whenever he can get in there. And so, and whenever he does come, he can tell us about himself if he does get a chance to jump in. But does anyone else have any more comments about that question?
Well, yeah, I would definitely like to address, you know, does Christianity come from Kemet, you know?
Okay.
I wanted to see if Brian had something to chime in as to corroborate with Robert's story or his concepts.
Okay. I agree with Robert, because Christianity could not begin until Christ. What came before Christianity was Judaism, and the ideas in the belief system in Judaism has nothing to do with Kemet, and it doesn't reflect Kemet. I mean, it speaks specifically of a God and one God. It speaks specifics on, I mean, a lot of things, a lot of different laws and rules and regulations. So, and that didn't match up with any of the Kemetic teachings. I mean, I know William has a different point of view, but
As do I. I said, as do I. I know that William has a different point of view.
Right. You know what I mean? I know he has a different point of view, and that's what we're going to go through and start searching and breaking down, because nowhere in Christianity or Judaism is it believed that, first of all, you can die or come back or anything like that. And it is not believed that you can take anything with you after death. And that was a very strong belief in not only Kemet, but in also in Egypt, because they also believed that the earliest writings of what William would say was Kemet, the earliest writings show that they thought that they can take things into the afterlife. And Christianity nor Judaism teaches anything like that.
Well, these days, I've never seen a U-Haul truck, you know, following the funeral, you know, when they're
right. Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. You know, there's nothing you can take with you. You know, there's nothing that this world connects into the spiritual world at all with Christianity, except, and the fact that we actually have a spirit, something actually happens. But the spirit world is separate from the physical world, in that there's sort of like a, if I was to describe it to somebody, I would call it like a veil. And that's the reason why demons can't actually reach out and touch you on the shoulder. Okay. If you saw the movie Ghost, remember he had to concentrate to just push a pop can. You know, that's a demonstration of the veil that I'm talking about. He had to kind of cross that line. And it's very, very difficult. And that's the reason why spiritualism, as far as Michael Miller was be concerned, does not work, because it's not repeatable. And Christianity teaches you're not supposed to deal with that, because you're actually dealing on you're dealing on a level that we're not attuned to. Just like the brother said, you know, wavelength and patterns and all like that. He is, like I said, he's got a lot of facts, but he's just got the wrong conclusions. And so you have to be very, very careful as a person in this world to deal with the spiritual world, because you're opening yourself up to stuff. For example, like Ouija boards. They do work, albeit they're not scientific. They do not have repeatable things. And so you have to be very, very careful there, because all of a sudden you might find yourself in something that you cannot get out of with a spirit that does not mean.
All right, it sounds like he's losing signal.
Yeah.
But
Okay, Tehuti Forever, you had something to comment. You want to comment on the same question?
I do. I would like to comment on the same question.
And does Christianity come from Kemet?
Okay, so I was raised Christian, so you know I was in the church, and I
Should have
learned.
stayed there, brother.
I learned the Christian way, so I understand how Christians think. I understand the Christian culture.
Okay, you
I
might
also-
understand the culture.
I also simply started studying the Bible on my own. You know, I reached out to Jesus Christ on my own, and I studied the Bible on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I also decided to go ahead and see what other versions are taught in this Bible. So then I began studying with the Mormons. I studied with the Jehovah's Witness. I studied with the Nation of Islam. I studied with the Hebrew Israelites, just to get a broader perspective of what people were saying about the scriptures. At one point, more recently, a few years ago, I learned about Kemet. And then I learned the connections between our ancient ancestral teachings and the Bible. And then, of course, that just blew my mind. When I saw all of how relevant Kemet is today and how prevalent the culture is inside the United States of America, it is all over the place. It is all over the place. So to answer the question, well, let me mention this first. So not only did Kemet create the concepts that you find in Christianity, Christianity is basically an evil version of Kemet. It's basically an evil version of Kemet. And I like to say that myself after my years of studying. Kemet is a pure concepts and a pure understanding of energy and spirituality without the wickedness added into it that's been put into it over the years because people have different agendas. There is no scriptures that tells you, you know, that it's okay to beat your wife with a certain stick if certain situations happen, or to stone a person, stone a woman if something happens. You know, there's no scriptures like that. All the wickedness, if you pull that wickedness out of the Bible and you look at just the concepts in it, you'll see a lot of those concepts originate in Kemet. Now, Brother Robert stated that he made a good point. He said that God wrote a lot of the stories in astrology. By looking at the stars, God was trying to get people's attention. He mentioned that.
He didn't say astrology, but go ahead.
Well, he might not use that term, but the stars and the constellations, that's basically what he's saying, is that these constellations tells a story, and God was trying to get people's attention, and that's why he did that. But you're missing a really key point. The stars do not tell a story.
He didn't say stars though.
Okay, well, do you want to correct me on what he said?
Yeah, he said God was already trying to tell the story before Christianity had even begun. So he said God was trying to get in touch with people. He was telling other cultures the story, but until he tuned in with Abraham, that's when it kicked off from Judaism to Christianity, is basically what he was saying. He said nothing about the stars or constellations.
Well, this is being recorded, right? And because it's being recorded.
What's been recorded?
Well, this conversation is being recorded. We're on record. We're on YouTube.
Okay.
So you may have missed it. I didn't miss it. He mentioned the stars. He stated that he spoke for me and said that we may say things like the stars told the story, but then he went back and said
I missed that.
Yeah, you might have missed that. It's okay. We can play it from the beginning. Play it back. But the point I want to say about that is stars do not speak. They do not tell stories. One culture can look at the stars and have absolutely no stories added to it. They might just chart out the stars.
I know what he said. He was talking about the sun moving in the shape of a cross. That's what he was talking about, not the stars.
Okay, well, the sun moving in the shape of a cross, or however you want to put it. The bottom line is, regardless of how the sun moves, that is not connected to Christianity at all. That is not what we're claiming. What we're telling you is a Pacific people came up with a concept based on what they saw. I can go outside and I can look at the sun moving right now and come up with no concepts, no stories behind it. It'll be nothing but, oh, the sun is moving across the sky. But what these people, the Ramich, ancient Kemetic people, what they did is they described it through their culture and art forms. The culture in the art forms became the story, not the fact that the sun is moving, not the fact that the stars does this or the stars do that. It's specifically how the culture represented that movement, right? So the movement themselves technically is a foundation, but that's not what it went into Christianity. That did not create Christianity. Our culture, the culture created it, right? If it wasn't for our culture talking about how the sun moved, years later, no one else may have came up with that same kind of story, right? So the death and resurrection, we made that up. The sun doesn't actually die. The sun does not actually die for 3 days and then resurrect. That's not what it does. The sun simply moves in a circular motion. It simply moves straight through space, and the earth simply revolves around the sun. That's what happened, literally. The sun never dies. It does not die for 3 days, and it does not resurrect on December 25th.
We know the sun does not technically, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, man. If you have something to say, please. But no, everybody knows the sun does not technically die, but it's called the winter solstice. And with the winter solstice, the sun does move in a certain, the earth wobbles in a certain way, and it makes the sun appear to move in the shape of a cross. And because of that, on December 24th, I believe it is, it goes down to the lowest point in the sky, which in the past they called it the death of the sun, because it was at a very low point, not because it technically died. That's a whole different kind of concept. And right. So now go ahead.
My point is, it's not about the motions of the sun. We cannot focus on the motion of the sun as if that's what we're saying Christianity came from. No, Christianity did not come from the motion of the sun.
Right.
We made up stories. we got to make this distinction between the fact that the sun does do something, but that did not create a religion. Our interpretation of what the sun did. So if Kemet never came, no one would have said the sun died for 3 days and resurrected on December 25th. It wouldn't have been said because the culture wouldn't have created that story, right? So we have to understand, Robert is saying God was trying to get our attention, but the truth of the matter is we created the story based on what we saw. We could have created any other kind of story that we wanted to, but we chose to create the story that best fit our concepts of what we were looking at. So his idea that God was trying to get our attention is not correct.
Well, that's just depending on the perspective. You know what I mean? Because as a believer, we believe everything is connected. So that's he's talking from the standpoint of a believer. So I'm gonna speak from more technical. You know what I mean? I'm a believer, but I'm gonna try to do it to where I'm gonna try to explain stuff to where both parties can understand it on a technical level. Is what I'm speaking of.
I agree, and I completely understand. But here's the thing: if the Kemetic people didn't say the sun died for 3 days and resurrected on December 25th, that concept may never have existed.
What concept?
The about the sun dying for 3 days and resurrecting December 25th.
So you saying that came from Kemet?
It came from Kemet. That's Kemet mythology, yes. So what I'm saying is that concept may never have existed.
Okay, I mean, look, back in the past, the only way that people, civilizations would survive is through growing crops and understanding how the earth rotates and how the seasons and everything come to be. So they knew when to plant and when to harvest and all of this stuff. So they watched and paid attention to the stars and the sun and everything very, very closely. Now, I'm not saying that Kemet did not know about the winter solstice, but I think.
All right, Brian, sounds like you're cutting out as well.
Oh, really?
Oh, you're back.
You're good.
I'm good? Okay. All right. But yeah, so I'm not saying that Kemet did not know about the winter solstice. I have never seen any evidence that Kemet knew about the winter solstice. I mean, I've never seen any writings. I've never seen it, but I will say in the past, everybody paid attention to the sun. Everybody paid attention to the moon, to the stars, because that's how they grew their crops. That's how civilizations would survive. That's the only way civilizations survived. So they had to pay attention to the seasons, and understanding the seasons and it had to do with watching the sky. So with that being said, I'm not saying that Kemet did not know about the winter solstice, but I will say that, because I do know civilizations in the past knew about it, but I won't say that I've never seen evidence that Kemet knew about it.
Okay, but this is what I'm saying. Let's stick on the really small nuance of what I'm actually explaining. It's not about watching the sky. That's part of it, of course. It's part of watching the sky. The key factor is the interpretation of the dance. We're seeing these stars dance around and then reinterpret it, and we give it stories, right? Those stories are the point. It is not the sun itself that we're focusing on and saying, well, the sun is why, Christianity came about. No, it's how we spoke about the sun. Our particular interpretation. If you wipe us off the map, we wouldn't have ever had a 3-day death and resurrection. You understand what I'm saying? So it is the interpretation.
Everything is due to human interpretation. I agree.
Right.
So I mean, everything is left up to human interpretation, but I understand Robert's side because I'm also a believer. So I understand. What he's saying is God is trying to show us a symbol, and he's using the sun to do it. And he knows that we were going to watch the sun. He knows we're going to pay attention. He knew that we were going to find this message written in the sky, and it's basically still showing Christ. But I can understand from your perspective is you're saying that basically it's just all due to interpretation. So yeah, I mean, yeah, basically it is all due to interpretation. But as a believer, I understand. So yeah, I mean, that's just the winter solstice. But at the same time, the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ actually happened. So that's not like a myth or just a story. That is like history.
Let's look at it this way. Is United States of America modern era more advanced than ancient Kemet? What would you say?
Is modern day today more advanced than Kemet was?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Did we create a story about the sun dying and resurrecting after 3 days?
No.
No. Right?
Huh?
So that story was created in ancient times. It's not something that every culture is going to create. Every culture is not going to look up at the sun and create that story, no matter how modern or you are. But
well, you got to understand
a specific culture.
Okay, but what you have to understand is the sun makes the shape of a cross. Well, a cross is a crucifix, and a crucifix, or the way that Jesus was killed, was invented at a way later date than Kemet. Matter of fact, it actually came from Persia, and it was invented in Persia, but then it moved over into Rome, and Rome perfected it. Okay, they perfected the art of crucifixion. You can study any culture around the world and find out where crucifixion comes from in the actual cross.
Well, let me chime in. So that's incorrect. The sun, as far as I know, the sun never makes a shape of a cross. I've never seen in any imagery tracking the sun that it makes any shape of any cross.
Well,
now, I think I know where you're coming from. There is a constellation that has 4 points, but any 4 points is going to make some kind of a cross. But there's a constellation that has 4 points that's considered the crux constellation. And I think that might be what you're talking about, but the sun never goes in the shape of a cross. Whenever you've seen the sun go down and up and side to side, you've never seen that, right? Yes. So that is an incorrect interpretation. But my point is that it comes from a particular culture. That's what I want you to understand.
Okay, Google. What shape does the sun make in the winter solstice?
On the website WashingtonPost.com, they say, daylight hours on the solstice. In the lower 48, daylight on the winter solstice exceeds 10 hours in most of Texas, Louisiana, and Florida, while much of the upper Midwestern states near...
But I'm sorry, but the winter solstice is something that exists. It is something that cosmologists and astrology, astrologists and everybody, they study this, they see this. And this is an actual scientific fact. So for you to say that, or that is made up, or you deny that the sun moves in that shape, it's called the winter solstice. You can actually...
So you don't understand what the winter solstice is. The sun moves in a figure 8 throughout the year. It moves in a figure 8. That's what it does. It doesn't move in any type of cross.
That's not what science reports. I'm sorry. Off the latest data.
That's what the sun does. It doesn't, bro. How does the sun go straight up and down and then side to side? How can it do that?
The earth wobbles. The earth has a wobble to it. Okay, so it doesn't move at a smooth rotation like a lot of people think. The earth has a wobble to it. And that wobble, and during the winter time, okay, well, what the sun actually do during the winter time is that the furthest point of the earth moves farther from the sun, which is why it causes winter time, of course, and And so with that, and with that wobble, it causes the sun to make the movement of a shape that symbolizes, it goes down. I'm sorry, it goes side, side, and then down, I believe. But it makes this a shape of what it looks to appear to be a cross. I promise you, I'm sorry, I'm not making this up. You can actually Google this. These are what scientists have actually said and studied. This is not my opinion. This is not something that came out of my head. This is something that I actually read and studied myself. So I encourage anybody to.
Two things. Let's say somehow there's some interpretation of this. You said he does that on the 24th, right? Just one day. It moves in the cross.
No, it goes down for 3 days.
When is it moving in the cross? At what point is it going like doing the cross thing, as far as what you're saying?
Because of the wobble. So it moves.
But, I mean, is it 3 days? Is it a 3 day period?
Yeah. It's a 3 day period, but it reaches its lowest point on the third. It reaches its lowest point and it stays there for 3 days, I believe, or it appears to stay there for 3 days. And then it goes back up into the sky again. And then that's when it's all over. And I believe that's
obscure concept that I have never heard of. Because as
a concept. I'm saying this is
okay, but as a Kemet, I study the sun. I study the movement of the sun, and I know that for a fact that the sun moves in a figure 8. Now, if it moves in the cross, according to some people, on 3 days, that's cool. I've never heard of it. It's never been mentioned. So let's not say that I'm saying that. Okay, let's not say that that's coming from me, because I am not claiming that. Now, what I will claim is the sun might reside in the sky directly over the Crux constellation. A Crux constellation is just 4 points in the sky. So I'm gonna give you that, because it really doesn't make any difference, because I am not saying that the sun is moving in a cross, right? So we're not gonna address me by saying that, because I'm not claiming that. But what I will say is that it's not because of the way the sun moves, it's because of how we interpret it, right? And not every culture interprets it in that way. This interpretation comes from a specific culture. So when you look at the story, the 3-day death and resurrection on December 25th, we know that that's a Kemetic story. It's not about it's not just about the way the constellations move or the way the sun moves. It's mainly pinpointing on how we interpreted it and how we spoke about it. Our words was translated, not just the way the sun moves. That's the point I'm making.
But see, my point is, in Kemet, I've never seen evidence of them speaking of a cross figure in the sun.
I didn't say that. That's what I'm saying. You can't put that on me, because I never said that. That's the whole reason for me saying I'll let you have that. I just don't say that I'm saying that.
Okay, I get you.
Right. So the basic story is this. This is Haru. This is actually Haru Ra. This sphere on the top, that's the sun. So his father is Asar. And Asar is cut up into many pieces, right? Which is, before he dies, he's killed, he's cut up into many pieces, and then he's put back together. But he's dead, he dies, he's dead for those 3 days, December 22nd, December 23rd, and December 24th. Asar is dead. And then his consort resurrects him on December 25th, and that births the son of God, the son of Asar, which is Haru. Now, Haru simply means hero. It is the concept of becoming a hero. Anytime you're being heroic, that is your Haru energy. Asar means perfection. These concepts.
Perfection dies?
I'm sorry?
Perfection dies?
So this is the way, remember, this is mythology. So you have to understand.
Even in mythology, how can perfection die if it's perfect?
Okay. Let me answer that question. So remember, this is heroism, to become heroic. His name is Haru. That's where we get it, the concept from. Osiris is his father. And the Kemetic concept is all the Neteru, the Neter, dual form of Neter is Neteru. All the Neteru is simply energy. You can transform one energy into another energy, right? Energy is always playing in a balance and transforming. In order to be perfect, you got to think about the concept. If you're perfect, you have to fight Isfet. Isfet is wrongdoing, negativity, things that are not supposed to happen. You have to destroy Isfet. If you do not destroy Isfet or negativity, how can you be perfect? A perfect being is going to destroy Isfet. What happens to your energy if you're perfect and you destroy Isfet? You become the hero. That is what the story is telling you. Asar becomes the hero. And in astrology, when you look at the sun, it dies on December 21st, it's dead for 3 days, and it resurrects on December 25th.
I disagree.
About what?
When I read it in the writings, Asar and Haru are two different persons, and they never become one. So how can Asar become the hero?
So you have to think about it. We're talking about do you agree that this story is based on the movement of the sun?
No.
So that's right there is why you don't understand the concept. You believe that Asar dies for 3 days and resurrects? Do you believe that?
No, I don't. I've never seen writings that said he died for 3 days, and they never wrote dates on the side of in hieroglyphics. So to say that it says a specific date.
Okay. Do you believe that Asar dies and the story says Asar dies and resurrects?
No, he didn't resurrect. To resurrect, that's doing self. He had help. It was actually I'm gonna say Isis.
Os is fine. Yeah, Isis. Os. Okay, let me reword it so we can get on the same page.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Asar die and come back to life.
Huh?
Does Asar die in the stories that you read and come back to life?
He came back to life for 1 day, and then he went into the underworld.
Okay, fantastic. So now we have a state of agreement.
Well,
okay,
they said it wasn't really.
He comes back.
They said he wasn't really alive. It was more like a spirit form. But okay, go ahead. I would. For the sake of time and conversation, I'm gonna go ahead and agree and say he came back, but he really didn't come back from that. But anyway, go ahead.
But he lived again, right? He lived again for a day.
From the writings that I read, he wasn't really alive. He was just almost in a coma state, to where he was enough to. It was enough for him to impregnate Isis with Haru.
Okay, so
which makes Haru not of a born not of a virgin, because he was impregnated by Asar. She was impregnated by Asar. Right. That night, for that one night that he supposedly had slightly came back to life. It was just in a coma-like state, to where he was it was just enough to get her impregnated.
Okay, so just to give you some clarification of what it's actually talking about, what the stories are actually talking about, it's talking about the sun. That's what it's talking about, okay? We started off this conversation already, we started this conversation off already on the same term, understanding that it's a story about the sun, right? So we're gonna stick with, this is tracking the sun. You said it yourself many, many times. So
no,
you did
I
say.
Never said that. I never said that. I never said that. But go ahead.
Okay, so this is a story about tracking the sun. and you stated it's in reference to the winter solstice. You are 100%. You said it's in reference to the winter solstice early. I mean, we can bring back the record. We can pull back the recording.
I said the story. I said the story of Heru was a reference to the winter solstice. I said I've never seen any writings in Kemet that represented a cross or a cross-like figure. I've never seen any hieroglyphics that represent a crucifix. Now, so
okay, what stories? When you said that our stories were in reference to the winter solstice, which stories were you talking about?
I was saying what the winter solstice does. What the winter solstice does is it makes the shape of a cross in the sky. From the sun makes the shape of a cross. I never said that the story of Heru or the story of Osiris represented the winter solstice. Those words never came out of my mouth.
Yeah, you're right. You didn't say that particular story represented the winter solstice. What you said is that our stories do represent the winter solstice. You wasn't specific.
No, not the winter solstice. I would say a lot of stories represent the sun, not the winter solstice, but the sun.
Well, you used the term winter solstice earlier.
I don't remember using that, but if I did, I take that back. I don't remember saying that, but I'm saying if I did say that, the stories in hieroglyphics represent about Heru represent the sun, the actual sun.
Okay, so we see that you guys agree that it's about the sun, right?
But yeah, I'm not going to specifically say the winter solstice, but I will say yes, the sun.
This figure, this orange round thing on the top of his head is the sun. Do you agree? Okay. So do you agree that Heru has attachments to the sun?
Attachments to the sun?
Yeah, he's associated with the sun.
Okay, yeah, I'll say associated with the sun, yes.
Okay, so let's not get too down different rabbit holes. We're still speaking about the sun. Your question is, how is Osiris and Heru the same? Correct?
How is Osiris and Heru? Yeah, how can they turn into one person?
Exactly. So we have to understand what the story is about. The story is about the sun. How many suns do we have in our day sky?
One.
One sun. We understand that the sun dies for 3 days and is resurrected. There's only one sun, there's not two.
Okay.
You understand? So as Heru, who is the resurrectee, the one that is resurrected, as a representation of the same sun that died. It's just the new sun. You understand in the story, Osiris is the one who's cut up, correct?
Yeah.
So Osiris is the one who's cut up, and he's the one that's brought back to life for a day or whatnot to give birth to his son, which is still the sun that we're talking about. It's not two different suns. Since there's only one sun, it's only one energy. It's the same energy, just being reborn.
But later on, as far as the hieroglyphs go, he goes into the underworld. He never takes the place of the sun, and actually him and the sun have confrontations with each other. So they never become one. And I mean, and matter of fact, the whole point of Set, when he fights Set to take over from from day turns to night, according to the stories, in the hieroglyphics, he's fighting Set to avenge his father's death, because Set is the one who put him into the underworld by shredding him into many pieces, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
so you're saying they're doing two separate actions. They're in two places at one time doing two separate actions.
Yes, doing two separate actions, and not only doing two separate actions, I believe they get into it at a certain point. I got to go back and look at my notes, but I believe they actually had a disagreement about something.
Okay.
Matter of fact, a lot of the Egyptian writings say a lot of the gods had disagreements about certain things. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
So keep in mind, we're actually just in the mythology just to get an understanding before we actually move on to, how does it relate into Christianity? But okay. You acknowledge that there's only one son, right? There's not two sons.
One son.
For to die and resurrect, the resurrectee has to be the same son. It's the same energy. It's not something, it's not a different.
Something different, right. It's the same son.
That is the only thing that they were saying in the story. So they're not saying that the son dies and then poof, a different son came that is not related to the first son. It's the same energy. That's all they're saying. Now, how that relates into Christianity.
I'm not saying that it's a part of the winter solstice. And how do we know that it's on that specific date? Like, where are we getting this date from?
Which date?
You saying December 25th. So how do you know, like, where is this written in the hieroglyphs to where it says December 25th or anything about the winter solstice in the hieroglyphs?
You have to understand the story, right? So if we know what days the sun dies and resurrects. We don't have to, listen, we already know the dates that the sun dies. We know it because you can go outside and you can see the date.
Okay.
Noah was there for 3 days. You gave me the dates. I didn't give you the dates.
Right. It goes for 3 days. I said it starts on the 20, I think it was on the 24th.
On the 21st.
21st, maybe. Okay.
So the 21st, the sun dies, and it remains dead for on the 22nd, the 23rd, and the 24th. It resurrects on December 25th. We already know those dates. So when you see the story of us describing the sun, you know which dates they're talking about. The sun doesn't do that on other days.
Okay, but how do you know they talked about the winter solstice was my question. Because they do say they do a lot of stuff representing the sun, but a lot of cultures did. And a lot of cultures didn't know about the winter solstice. That's what I'm saying. So to say that the Kemet knew about the winter solstice, and that's what the stories is representing, I can apply that same ideology to different cultures and what they believe. Even Native Americans, they looked at the sun a lot.
Okay. So I believe that we need to move on to the next question. Do you have any idea that you want to say right now about this question?
I'm good.
I was going to answer his query, but I think we can move on. That's totally fine. As long as we understand that Haru and Osiris is a representation of the sun, and he said it might have been talking about other days or different dates or something. That's totally fine.
Okay, so we can. Haru and Osiris have something to do with the sun, and Brian 12 Smith is saying that the sun makes a cross shape. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question, and it says, what is the historical process that occurred for Kemet information to become part of Christianity?
Right. So I was hoping that my teacher would actually be on here to bring out his information, but I'll make it a really brief answer. Basically, it's not voodoo like Robert was talking about, or witchcraft, or I don't know what Robert was talking about. Things happen in history. It gets recorded and it gets built upon. You can call it evolution. Everything evolves. Everything is built upon. Now, I've heard a lot of different explanations as far as why stuff in Kemet, which has evidence of it occurring, looks similar to stuff in Christianity that has no evidence or very few evidence of it occurring. I hear stories about, the devil went back there and he told the Kemites to do something a certain way, and that's why it looks like it's correct. Or I've heard God went into the stars and wrote it out in the stars. But in reality, it was just men. Men wrote stuff down. Other men read it. period. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, any more remarks on the question?
I'm not understanding, like, what are you trying to say? Like, what's your point?
Let me state the question again. Let's see. What is the historical process that occurred for Kemetic information to become part of Christianity? How did Kemetic information become a part of Christianity?
I don't believe Kemetic information became a part of Christianity. And I mean, and I disagree with William because that's what I'm saying. I didn't understand what you were saying, but I disagree with you because there are different parts of the world that had no form of communication with each other. They came up with their own culture, their own ideologies, their own languages, their own civilizations. I mean, it wasn't traveling back then was not easy. Like even pioneers in the United States to travel from California to New York would take almost years. As a matter of fact, it would take years, and that's by horse and wagon and traveling through trails. So different cultures, I mean, to travel and to say that these ideas were all built upon from here is I would say is very incorrect. I mean, especially when you look at China. China has its own world, its own customs, its own. I mean, you can't say that they built Buddha off of Kemet, or look at the Native Americans, or I mean, no, I disagree.
Let me address what you're saying because it doesn't actually make sense for you to be saying that. Where do the Bible scrolls come from?
What are the what?
What region are the scrolls found in?
Middle Eastern.
Middle Eastern. Was there travel between Kemet and Middle Eastern?
I don't know. Kemet did not last according. Well,
Kemet,
I'm gonna say this like this because Kemet did not. You say Egypt took over from Kemet, so a lot of the stuff that's found in other cultures looks like it comes from Egypt and not Kemet. So depending on what actual date you're stating that was Kemetic or Egyptian is all depending on where stuff were,
again, you're making another faulty point. And I'll explain why. The
Okay.
people who came in and conquered Kemet, they did not bring in their culture. They adopted the Kemetic culture.
Okay, right? So everything that's going on in Egypt is still Kemetic?
What I'm saying in ancient times, right? In ancient times, and any time that we're going to be referring to, back then when we're dealing with the Bible, it doesn't matter because the people who came and conquered, they adopted the culture of Kemet. They didn't force. They did not force their culture onto Cometians. They adopted the culture. So our stories were still being told. That's what we're saying. And the question is, because you're saying we didn't travel, like not traveling, so you couldn't get the information of people who was writing the Bible. That's totally incorrect because we were ports. Byblos was a Kemetic port. That was our port, Byblos. So when during the era that the Bible would have been written, the scrolls would have been written, that Byblos was a Kemetic port. We were selling and transacting in that area. That was us. That was not another people's.
Byblos comes from the Greek.
Correct. So
right. So
during the time that we're talking about, right, during that era of the biblical writing, it was a Kemetic port.
The biblical writings did not last in just one era. It took over 1,500 years to comprise. So to say it is during the biblical writing or during that era, what era do you refer to? And then it refers to different time periods because when Adam and Eve was being written about, it wasn't during the time of Adam and Eve. You see what I'm saying? Or the story of Noah was being written about, it wasn't during the time of Noah, it was at a later date talking about Noah. So it talks about time periods way before even Kemet existed.
Okay, so I'm looking up Biblos so that we can get this completely straightened out.
Helios Biblios is a Greek term, and Helios refers to their sun god and not the sun god of Kemet. Helios was a sun god who tied a lasso around the sun and drove a chariot around the earth. That's who Helios was. He was their sun god. Biblios comes from the word writings.
All right, so let me share my screen here, because you're saying that Kemetic people couldn't travel.
I never said couldn't. I'm just saying to travel was unlikely because of the harsh conditions and scarce food. People died trying to travel from one place to another. So to travel is definitely a difficult thing to do.
Okay, so this.
What is this? Wikipedia what?
Yeah, I'm just pulling this up on Biblos. Yeah, this Wikipedia on Biblos.
Okay.
And then we're going to scroll down here because it's so hard to travel that this was it couldn't have been heavily influenced by Kemet, but it says the Egyptian period.
Okay, so that's what I said about the time frame that you referred to.
Right. So we got different dates on here. 13th dynasty, which is the same as, or which is 1350 BCE. When would you say that the Bible would have been written in? Oh, shoot.
What?
Around what time was the Bible written in, would you say?
I'm not sure. I don't want to start saying numbers that I don't know. Off the top of my head.
No earlier than 1500 BCE, right? No earlier than that. There's no way it was nowhere near earlier than that.
When it was written?
Right.
Or the time frame that it was written about?
When it was written, when the people conjured up the stories.
Conjured. Okay, that's a word. Okay.
Right. What time frame was that when they started writing? When they wrote it down?
I'm not sure. I want to say around 750 BC.
Okay, that's pretty
I want to say. I'm not sure.
1000, 1200 BCE.
Nah, don't give me. Hold on, I'll find out.
Right. So the point is, we were already there. We were already there. So for you to say that, we couldn't travel, or to make some kind of excuse that we couldn't travel, we owned Biblos. That was us. And that's where the name Bible comes from. Go to the next question, unless you have something else to say.
I got to look into that. I don't know. It just like I said, during the time periods. But like I said, maybe, okay, Biblos is one word. Biblios is what the Bible is, and that comes from Greek. So Biblos and Biblios is two different words. One's a Greek word and one might be a Kemetic word.
We're talking about the land. The word is always Greek. I agree. The word is Greek. I'm talking about the land.
Okay, but Biblos and Biblios is not the same word as what I'm saying.
I agree. Okay. It's still Greek. All of it is Greek.
It might be still Greek. I don't know. But it can't be Greek if it's coming from Kemet.
Biblos is a land that was supposed to be founded by Kronos, right? The Kronos stories. This is European stories. What I'm saying is, at that time, it was a Kemetic outpost. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it wasn't Greeks there and Greeks didn't name it. That has nothing to do with it. What I'm saying is Biblos, the landmass, was a Kemetic outpost.
Okay, so the point that you're making, can we get those points, and then we'll move on to the next question.
My fault. My phone rang and it muted you for a second, but I'm sorry. Go ahead. We can go to the next question.
I want to move on to the next question, but before we go, I just wanted to hear the point that you are making right now.
Oh, okay. I'm saying that biblios and biblos are not the same word.
Your voice went out again. Your sound is
Yeah, I
out.
keep getting phone calls. I'm sorry, it keeps muting.
Oh,
But
okay.
biblos and biblios are not the same words. So I'm saying they might be Greek, but if biblos comes from Kemet, it cannot be a Greek word if it's a Kemet land. It comes from Kemet, but biblios means writings, and that's a Greek word. So these are not the same words that we are trying to mush together, is what I'm saying. So yeah, so biblios is writing. So helios biblios is what I thought that's what you was referring to, but biblos might be something way different.
Okay, Tehuti forever. Let's hear the point that you're bringing across here.
I wasn't talking about the word. I was talking about a place called Biblos.
Okay. Oh, it might have been a place called Byblos in Greek. I mean, in Kemet that was named there from the Greek. I don't know, but
the point is, Kemet, our borders changed over time. Byblos was a Kemetic outpost. That was us. During the time of the writing, Byblos is in the Middle East. It's a little further up than Canaan. Okay, so it's in that area.
Canaan's around Jerusalem. That's around Israel. That's not around Egypt.
Exactly.
I mean,
I agree.
Okay. We can continue this for a long time. But
right.
Can you give us the point that you're making, and we'll go to the next question.
Well, that's the point that I'm making, is that Kemet outposts were spread all the way out through the Middle East, all the way up through Byblos. And that was us during that time that you're finding these writings about us in our stories. Originally, the Bible, the first entry in the Bible was the Exodus, which is a story that takes place in Egypt, in Kemet. But yeah, you can
at that date that was a later date than Kemet. That was a date that you would consider Egypt, because yeah, that was a much later date than the first pyramids and everything being built. But we can proceed. I don't want to hold everything up with this.
The next question is, how does Kemetic history contradict biblical narrations?
Well, that's gonna. So some of these questions are not going to be completely fair to Brian, being that it was written out directed towards my teacher if Brian hadn't showed up. So that was
we can move to the next question if you want.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Where did the Bible come from?
You want me to answer? Okay. Well, yes. The Bible are ancient writings, and the Bible comes from different authors. So the books of the Bible are exactly that. They are different books, all put underneath one umbrella, and they all come from different time periods. But what they are is ancient writings, and it started off in the Old Testament in Judaism. So, like I said, Christianity stems from Judaism. So the writings of the Bible were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls in Quam Cave, and they were like I said, just ancient writings, and they're actual eyewitness perspectives or eyewitness testimonies of Jesus Christ actually living and being resurrected. There were actual eyewitnesses claiming that they've seen things of the supernatural realm.
Right. So I'd like to say, let me make sure she's unmuted here for a second. Okay, so I'd like to say that the Bible, the name Bible comes from Byblos, obviously, which was a Kemetic outpost.
I knew, so that's what I was saying, but go ahead.
It's a place, it's a location. Byblos is a location. That's
but Biblios means writings, and that's why it was named Bible. It was Biblios, not Byblos. Byblos is a place, but Biblios actually means writing.
Agreed. So the reason why they named that location Byblos, their main export was papyrus. Papyrus is where we get the word paper from. And these scrolls were written on this type of papyrus that comes out of Kemet.
Papyrus?
Yes, it comes out of Kemet. So that was our main export at that particular location. That's how the book got its name, because of the paper that we were selling out of Byblos. That was our main export, right? So the question is, where did the Bible come from? So I want to explain that aspect of it. And then the stories written in the Bible are similar to the stories that was written in our mythology, the Kemetic mythology. We've already agreed that they're similar. The death and resurrection, you've already agreed that Osiris died and came back to life for one day.
Okay,
this is something already agreed upon.
I agree that he was brought back to life. He wasn't resurrected, is what I said. Okay. Resurrection is something that is basically done by self. Okay. I resurrected. You know what I mean? I brought myself back to life. That means I resurrected. Or I can be resurrected, but normally it's by something. So in this case, Isis resurrected, if you would say, or brought back to life Asar. So in that story, I mean, you can say that's similar, but then that's just saying that something died and came back. And then by saying that, everything that dies and comes back is similar. So
I would say, yeah, everything that dies and comes back is similar. I would agree to that. Because I don't know many things that die and come back. So, but if there was a whole bunch of stuff that died and came back, I wouldn't use that similarity to make a connection. But because that's a very rare thing to see, something die and come back, and we're talking about
nature does that.
We're talking about a what you would consider a deity, right? In the story, you would consider it a deity. And then he goes to the underworld. And he is the reason why everyone else has an opportunity to for everlasting life. That's his position once he goes to the underworld. So this is the same story as Jesus. Jesus goes and he gives you everlasting life. He dies and he resurrects.
No, that's all wrong. It isn't him going to the underworld that gives everybody an opportunity. No. Him having to be the sacrifice already gives everybody the opportunity. Him being the sacrifice, him shedding blood. That's why everything is about the blood of Jesus, the blood of the Lamb. It's about the blood.
Did Asar shed blood?
He did what?
Did Asar shed blood?
I don't know if Asar shed blood or not. He's supposed to be a god.
He was cut into 14 pieces.
He's supposed to be a god. How can a god even die?
So now did Jesus die?
But Jesus was a man. Jesus was a man and God. See, he was 2 in 1. So it wasn't the same. He was physical and spiritual.
Right. So what we're saying is that there are certain things that we can.
Asar is just spiritual. Or Asar is supposed to be an ultimate being. He's not. No, he's not physical.
Right. So
how do you die?
Right. So what you're saying is there's certain things that we can see that are dissimilar, and there are certain things that are very similar as far as the death. And I'm not going to use the word resurrection, but
you can
rebirth, live again, whatever you want to call it, to make it dissimilar from what you said.
No. You can say resurrection. You can say resurrection, but in that sense, you can say anything that dies and comes back resurrects. And then in that sense, nature resurrects, because every winter, everything dies. And every spring, everything comes back. That's what winter and spring is.
I would put forth that even the word resurrect comes from Kemet, comes from the same story of Asar. Because what happens is his penis is erect. And all you guys are saying is resurrection. You're saying res-erection. That's all you're really saying.
Okay.
Just that whole concept comes from Kemet. In
Now
our story.
Now you're playing with words. Resurrection and erection. Okay, they are very similar sounding words, but resurrection is just a word that we use to describe Jesus coming back. That's all. So we don't even have to say resurrection at all. We can just say Jesus died and he came back to life.
But why is it resurrection?
Because resurrection in the English language means to come back to life.
Why?
Why? That's just the English language. That's just
because when you go back all the way through to the foundation of the English language, you find a story where Osiris died and his penis was able to re-erect.
Okay, but even in hieroglyphs, they didn't use the word erect. Their word that they used was something different. It's just that in the English language, that's how we translate that word. So I mean, you're just playing with words, and that has no connection.
I didn't say that they use the word, it's the concept. The word erect and erection is similar because of that concept. But we can move forward to the next point. Okay. Robert, make sure you click the audio, connect through the internet, Robert.
I think you got it.
I think I'm on. I'm getting help with a coworker of mine.
I hear you.
You guys hear me? I apologize. I've actually driven to a small city outside the big city that I live in and got food. And now I'm ready for the rest of the night.
All right. We're going to continue.
So to make it, to give more clarity is for someone who's watching, so they get a better understanding. I would like for you, when we're ready to move on to the next question, to tell us what your point is. So it kind of clarifies it for us. So could you go ahead and tell us the point you were making, Brian 12 Smith?
I'm just saying that the English language is what he's using, but I'm saying it's all been translated into the English language. So when he's using the words erect and resurrect, that's just how the English language goes. But in the hieroglyphs in Egypt, they didn't say erect. That wasn't a word. They didn't even use vowels. They didn't have vowel sounds. I mean, I'm sorry, they only use certain vowel sounds. So they didn't even have a word that was similar to erect. That's just how it portrays in the English language, which is just a word play in today's language. And again, that's just how English language came out to translate it. That doesn't mean the same thing. So.
Okay, and Tehuti Forever, what is the point that you were making?
His rebuttal about that is nonsensical. Doesn't make sense. Because I am not making a claim that they use the word resurrection back in Kemet. He's claiming that I'm saying that the word resurrection is found in Kemet or it's somewhere on the walls. That's not the claim I'm making. What I'm saying is the fundamental stories of our ancestors went into the creation of the English language. The English language came from our fundamental stories. The Latin language came from our fundamental stories. The Hebrew language came from our fundamental stories.
So you're going back and saying basically every single language came from Kemet, and that again is false because, like I said before, traveling was very difficult and there was no means of communication, especially over big bodies of water. Egypt didn't even have boats that would make it over big bodies of water. So to say that every
language
is all going back to Kemet is false because even China did not get their language from Kemet. Brazil did not get their language from Kemet.
We've already discussed this false analogy or this false concept that people didn't travel, and you've already seen. Hold on. I'm gonna clarify. We've already seen how that was completely 100% falsified. We've already seen that Kemet, Byblos, is in the Middle East and it was a Kemetic port. We've already seen this. Now you're saying that the language, because people don't move, or you guys need to drop that right now. Let me show you why you need to drop that. This this is it. Let me show you something. We know that Kemetic Byblos is in the Middle East, and it was a Kemetic port. And now we're going to talk about the language. You guys got to learn your history.
Okay.
Oh, we were just
here it is here.
For you to kind of wind it up. But we can go
here it is here. We're looking at the Hebrew alphabet, and we're seeing that it goes from Hebrew, Aramaic, Phoenician, Proto-Semitic script, and then the parent system, Kemet. You need to stop saying
no. That ain't what that's saying. It says parent systems. That's an S. That means plural, not singular. That means all of those are parent systems.
Okay, exactly. So it's going back. You see how it's going back? This was the first writing. This is the second. This is the third. This is the fourth.
No, you can't say that. You can't say that.
So you're sitting here looking at.
That's not what that's saying, is what I'm saying. That's not saying that that's the order it came in, or that came from that. That didn't say that. That's saying all of those are parent systems.
Okay, let's say all of. So how was Hebrew a parent system of Hebrew?
To include, if I'm not muted, I had raised my hand. To include cuneiform, which comes out of the Sumerians, which comes out of Iraq, okay, which has nothing to do with Kemet, which is actually in Africa. And you have to understand there is a difference between primitive people in Iraq or Samaria, for example, Sargon the Great, and Kemet, which is actually toward Egypt, Ethiopia, and that area. And look at the distance, because back in antiquity, the ancient times that we're talking about, when there were only city-states, they weren't even empires. This is way before the Persians. This is way before the Babylonians. And you have to be very, very careful when, like Brian pointed out, those are parent systems. In other words, one or two words or even phrases or even parts of Kemet came in, but then other parts also came in. But the Hebrew language is based on cuneiform, which is a different type of language root than Kemet, which is based on hieroglyphics, which is a pictorial type of language. And then if you go to the Chinese, which is also another pictorial language, it has a whole nother root system altogether.
Okay, so we're in agreement. Bottom line is we're in agreement that the hieroglyphs is a parent language to the Hebrew language.
No, we're not. We are in agreement that it was older and maybe they incorporated a few words. For example, there's Spanish words in English, because Spanish is older, but English itself, American English, traces its main roots back to England, not to Spain. So like I said, rodeo is a Spanish word. We have incorporated from that. So Spanish has some parent leanings to it, but our main parent language comes from England, which also goes back to the Normans, which also goes back to France and Germanic languages, as well as some Vikings. Most of its influence is from the northern part of Europe, not the southern, which is the Spanish. Even though in the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, cities like Cadiz was the center of learning. So you have to be careful. And they also got some of the Moors in there.
Let me ask you a question.
You ascribe something to that. You cannot, once again, William, finish making my point. You have great facts, you have the wrong conclusion.
Okay, so is there any written language, let's say alphabet, okay, older than Kemet? Is there anyone older?
There's what this is?
I don't know. I gotta look. Maybe in
okay.
No, there isn't. So there, Kemet is the creation of the written language using alphabets.
Okay, so, but what about Mesopotamia?
Mesopotamia doesn't get credit for being the oldest written language using alphabet. No.
If it's not the oldest, I mean, it's right next to Egypt, or what you would call Kemet. So I mean, they had to come or spiral. I mean, come out about the same era.
Does anything on here says Mesopotamia as far as apparent language for Hebrew?
Okay, but that's for apparent language for Hebrew. But okay, but go ahead. You said any older language. You asked, the question you just asked was, is there any older languages?
Okay, the answer to that is there is no older language written that wrote out alphabet. There's no older one.
No, William, if I may intertwine to answer your question, actually there was, because you said Phoenician, you said Canaan. Those are languages out of the Middle East, has nothing to do with Kemet, which traces their language back to cuneiform, which traces their language back to the Iraq and the Tigris and Euphrates River. The Tigris Euphrates River was a major river system in ancient times, long before there was writing. The Nile River is a major waterway, a major cultural influence in ancient times. And so what you have to watch is that you don't ascribe the Nile River culture to the Tigris Euphrates culture, which is just as old. The Ganges River in India, once again, major river system that had cultural influence, because that's, we all know that in ancient times, they started with river systems. And then of course you have the river that the Chinese river escapes my name right here, on me right here. So all of these major cultural systems where civilization first started, where writings first started. This is actually even before Kemet. Kemet had to evolve in the Nile River region to become the dominant force that it was in the Nile River region. It had to evolve from other systems, and they all coalesce into what you are studying, which is Kemet. But that has nothing to do with the major river system of the Tigris and Euphrates, because at that time, those people did not communicate. And that's what we're really saying. Be careful that you don't ascribe, and I'm gonna make my point and I'm gonna get off. Be careful that you don't use the various different times. For example, people did communicate in 600 BC, cross-communicate, but by that time the cultures were established. But 20,000 years ago, which is before you ever talked about Kemet, 50,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago, they did not communicate. That's my point.
That's totally fine. You were not on the topic. You were not about the topic that we were talking about, which was the oldest written alphabet. But you made some points in there about whatever topic you were talking about. But let's try to stay on point.
But once again, the oldest written alphabet is also in other cultures just as old or even older than Kemet.
We'll go to the next question. But yeah, like I showed you, Hebrew, the parent language for Hebrew is Kemet. And to be honest, if you guys had already studied your history, you'd know this already.
What's your destination?
Watch this. I'm sorry. I just found out something. Okay, Google, what is the oldest written language?
Here's what I understood from the website oldest.org. The Sumerian language is one of the earliest known written languages. Do you want a little more context?
Sumerian. That's Mesopotamian.
That's correct. Sumeria is Mesopotamian.
I don't understand, but I found something related. Incorrect. Do you want to know what is Mari famous for?
Okay, Google, stop.
If you look up information, you'll see it go back and forth. But our scholars agree that the oldest written language is Kemet. Now you got other information that comes out. Our scholars do agree on that. This is something that is already known.
Your scholars?
Correct.
What year are you talking? That's the easiest way. What year did Kemet start writing their language? What year?
The Namor palette is the oldest. So you're saying that?
That's like around almost 3,000 BCE. So we're talking maybe somewhere in there.
Now, the Code of Hammurabi is older than 3000 BC. So if your writing language starts in 3000 BC, the Code of Hammurabi, which is earlier than that, obviously they had to write it out.
So here's the issue that you guys are missing.
Well, the issue
I stated the alphabet. You're saying writings.
Well,
there's writings that are not alphabet.
To write it, you have to have an alphabet.
That is incorrect. That is incorrect. There was a lot of writings way before we came up with an alphabet. That's why I specifically said alphabet.
William, let me explain to you what an alphabet is. The Chinese, which do pictorial writing, they have an alphabet. An alphabet is just the system that you're using to write in that language. It's not just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and on through Z. It's not just the Greeks, which is alpha, beta, and all like that. An alphabet in language only means whatever language you are writing, that's the system that you do the writing in. So if there's an earlier writing, they had to have an earlier alphabet. It is
this is how writing came about in cultures. It came about as pictographs, not alphabet.
No.
It came about as pictographs. So if you guys are talking about pictographs, that was not the question. We're saying the oldest alphabet.
That is an alphabet.
Yeah, that is an alphabet.
That's a system that they understood.
That's a system that they understood. That's what alphabet means.
You guys are changing the words for alphabet.
No,
so here's the difference. So alphabet has phonics. You have to understand what alphabet is. Yeah, it has phonics. Hold on, let me explain it to you because you guys haven't studied this for some reason. So alphabet has phonics. A says a, B says but. Pictographs do not use phonics. They do not use phonics.
Yes, right? It does. No,
it does not use phonics.
A pictograph is a pictorial representative of the sound.
No.
For example, wall and water. That's how we got W, because the wall used to be wave. It was a picture of a wave. That's how come the W has the little wavy and the points. And it goes back to Sumerians, which has a wah sound, and that's how come they came up with that. The alphabet in itself that we're familiar with, A, B, C, D, E, is actually a picture of the sound. You're right that it all goes with phonics because you're making a sound and you're ascribing a meaning to the sound. And an alphabet is an organized means of what the sounds your mouth is making. And that's the reason why Chinese have their own, Sumerians have their own, and then Kemet and hieroglyphics have its own. Hieroglyphics is a pictorial representation of the sound that the Egyptians or the Kemets were making. That's what an alphabet is. Like phonics. So you have to
agree that there was a much older writings and forms of writings that is not alphabet, that's pictographs, older than Kemet. I automatically agree that that wasn't the question.
Thank you.
As far as a pictograph is concerned, if you wanted to say house, you would draw a house. If you wanted to say cow, you'll draw a cow. There's no alphabet to it.
That's an alphabet, sir. The Chinese use a pictograph. Their alphabet has 5,000 main characters. Our alphabet has 26.
And as far as it using phonics, there's no phonics. If you want to say house, you don't spell out house, you draw a house. If you want to say cow, you do not spell out cow, you draw a cow. So you're trying to, I hear where you're coming from, but you're just incorrect. You're just completely incorrect where you're coming from.
Understanding. A cow or a house, you draw a stylized picture of it. It's stylized. It's not a picture of an individual house. It's a stylized. It's got a roof and it's got sides. And if you follow the Chinese writing into the Japanese, into the Korean, you'll see how the house actually changes. And that's the reason why, for example, you saw the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and the lady was doing the calligraphy. That's the reason why they had to study that. Like I said, the 5,000 characters in the Chinese language in Mandarin, and their typewriter even reflects that. But it's a pictograph, all languages are based on an alphabet or a system of writing, and all of them are based on pictographs, and it goes back to time immemorial, and the earliest is in the writings as far goes to cultural regions. And I'm going to give Kemet the benefit of the doubt and say that they're all about the same, but they're different. So the people in Kemet couldn't contact the people in Sumeria because of the bodies of water and the distance involved back in antiquity, before they actually had boats and ships sailing. Is that understood?
So we'll go ahead and understand that we're not talking about the same thing. And understand that this is telling you off top where the oldest alphabet, where the Hebrew alphabet comes from. It tells you up here. He says you don't know, you don't understand how to read it. You say it's not going back, which one comes out of the next, but obviously that's what it's doing. And you're saying that you don't understand that Kemet has the oldest written alphabet, and you're saying that an alphabet, pictographs are alphabets. That's what you're saying. I totally understand. We'll agree to disagree, but that's not what this is saying, and I'm showing you here. Okay, so we can go ahead and head to the next question, unless Brian wants to go ahead and chime in.
Yeah, I'm not going to say if the Hebrew alphabet did not come from the hieroglyphics. I don't believe they did, but what I'm going to say is there are older writings than the Egyptian hieroglyphics or the Kemetic hieroglyphics. And they're okay. All right. So that just shows that everything didn't just come from Kemet.
No one's making that claim. No one is saying that Kemet was the beginning of the world. No
okay. All right. Cool.
Okay. We're just saying that the Hebrew alphabet comes out of Kemet.
No,
we're just saying that the Biblos was a Kemetic post at the time of the biblical writings. That's the only thing I will say.
Well, you can't even say that, because the Kemet writings and the Sumerian writings, which are older, the Hebrew language actually came out of the Sumerian type of writings. It has very little to do with Kemet.
Abraham came from the land of Ur, which was in Mesopotamia.
Right, and so it's that system. In antiquity, we're talking about 20,000 BC. That's the reason why I like to put a time with it, because the time of 20,000 BC is way different than the time of 400 BC and then 400 AD. So
there's no such thing. What are you talking about, 20,000 BC?
I'm talking about the writings that they had in 20,000 BC, which is way before Kemet writings. They have writings in Mesopotamia, which is a parent language of.
You mean 2000 BC? You mean 2000 BCE?
No, 20,000 BC. I know what I'm saying. 20,000 BC, because 20,000 BC is different than 2000 BC. 2000 BC is the time
BC. There was no men. We didn't have colonies. We didn't have that stuff out there. There was no such thing as Kemet. There was nothing like that. Kemet goes back to about 7.
That's the reason why we're making the claim. If I got writings to go back to 5,000, 10,000 BC, the Chinese Mandarin language started at 5,000 BC. So
you said 20,000.
Yes, that's what Sumerian language, the first Sumerian language, which is cuneiform, got its start. And it evolved up from there into the Canaanite language. It has nothing to do with Kemet, because as they evolved up, they didn't spread their ideas until a later time. And that's what I'm trying to get you to see, is when you talk about time periods, as far as oldest, you got to go back to the oldest one, and then everything goes from there. But Kemet did not get its start from cuneiform. Even though cuneiform is older, Kemet evolved its own language out of its own ideas, out of its own cultural influence, because they had their own presence of mind. So even though cuneiform and the Sumerians are older, it has nothing to do with the start of Kemetic language, because Kemetic language had its own mind. And you have to give the Kemite people their own credit for evolving their own ideas. And so a lot of times the oldest answer is really moot, because if Kemet didn't get anything from Samaria, and they didn't, they had their own ideas, they evolved their own cultural influences. So their culture is generic to them. It is original to them, even though it is not the oldest. The oldest is their form.
Let me ask you some questions, because you're saying the cultures didn't mix, is what you're saying?
Yes,
not at 20. They were independent, they developed independent. You're saying that the Hebrew language comes out of Samaria, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what does the word amen mean? Or
the
amen?
Word who?
Amen.
The word amen?
Yes.
The word amen is not even in Aramaic as far as being a language. It comes out of Latin, okay, which means so be it.
It means
That's
so
what
be it.
amen means.
And
It is a recent word that comes out of an older language. Latin doesn't start until approximately Rome doesn't really gain prominence from the Greeks, even though the trust.
It's a later language. I agree.
I'm trying to work my way through. So the Latin language doesn't really start coalescing until like 600-700 BC, and that's
really new.
Huh?
So here's the point. Here's my point. My point is those words. The word amen is a lot older than the Latin language.
No,
and it means
no. Because
let me finish what I'm saying. You spoke
the Latin amen. It has nothing to do with the Kemet amen.
Right. Let me finish what I'm saying.
Its own ideas, it's original to Kemet. But the Latin amen, which is a later version of the word, it has nothing to do with the Kemet amen. It didn't come from Kemet. It has nothing to do with Kemet. Kemet is original to Kemet. Latin has a whole different mindset, and so it's original to Latin, and it means so be it. Has nothing to do with any God, which I know where you're going because we've had this discussion before. It is original to Kemet. The amen here that you're talking about has nothing to do with the amen of Kemet in their time, which was 3000 BC, 2000 BC, 1000 BC. All of that coming up, that is a different word.
Okay, you done? So can I speak now without you cutting me off?
Yes,
thank you. So again, you say it has nothing to do with it. There's no connections, but you also said that the word amen means so be it, which means whatever I just prayed, make it happen. That's what it means, correct?
No, it just means that you're in agreement. Doesn't say make it happen. So be it means
so make it happen, so be it.
What you said. Right.
Okay, well, explain what so be it means.
So be it means, okay, I prayed for $1 million to be in my living room. And I say, amen. I'm in agreement with my own prayer that I want $1 million to appear in my living room. Doesn't mean that it's going to do it, because of course God, in a Christianity view, God has his decision whether he wants to do it or not. But all it means is that this is what I want. This is like the end of my prayer to let you know that I'm done speaking. Basically, like over, it means when you talk on the radio, I'm stopping speaking now. That's why I said over. But over in the English normal use just means that you turn it over in the bed. Two different meanings.
So be it doesn't mean I'm done talking. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean I'm done. It means to make it happen. It means make it be. Make it become. It means to make it become. That's what it means. Well, in ancient times, amen means exactly the same thing. It was the nectar of creation, the creator. Amen is simply to create or to make it happen, or so be it. It hasn't changed. Now, you might say it means I'm done talking, I'm done praying, but no, so be it means to make it happen. That's what it means.
Why do they? Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. Why do they put it at the end? How come you don't say amen and then continue?
You can.
You can, but
you can say amen and continue if you wanted to. That's our culture. But the word still means the same thing. The word means the same thing. That's what I'm telling you. It hasn't changed in its meaning. It means to make it happen. It means so be it.
Well, do you understand that you have no power to make it happen?
It's not about the power, I'm talking about the word.
When I pray as a Christian,
the definition of the word.
I have no power. When you're praying as Amen, okay, when you say it in the antiquity, I'm not sure exactly what they're meaning because you're connecting that to a God. In the Christian language of English that we use today, which goes from the Latin that we use in 300 BC, it has nothing to do with any God. It has nothing to do with we're going to do this under our power. The power is given over to somebody else. So it does not mean exactly the same. It has a concept of the same, maybe. I'll go with you there. However, you cannot link it to Kemet whatsoever, except for common usage, just like everybody opens the door. You know,
let me ask you a
put something
question.
aside.
In antiquity, was Amen familiar? Was the average person in the region of Kemet and the surrounding areas familiar with the Neter Amen? Was he popular?
In the Kemet region, if that was the Kemet language, it should have been. However,
that's our highest, most popular Neter.
Yeah, in the Kemet language. However,
right.
What you have to
understand, the one that would have been very difficult to lose. You're not going to lose the most common Neteru.
We're not going to. I'm not saying that you lose it. That is a different system. That's what I'm really trying to get through. It's a different system. The language that we use in Christianity of Amen is totally different than the Kemet use of Amen. It has nothing to do with, actually, when I say Amen, it has nothing to do with a God. It has nothing to do with anything except for this is let God know in our language use that I'm stopping. I'm going to a different thought.
What we agreed upon. What we've agreed upon is that it sounds the same and it means similar. Let's just say that.
I can go with that. I can go with that.
Let's go with that. And we'll move to the next question.
Oh, okay. The next question is going to be, okay, you guys kind of already went over that question. The name Bible comes from Biblios. What is Biblios, and was Biblios influenced by Kemet? So you guys kind of went over that. We'll go to the next question.
No, I don't think we've gone over that.
We did, but you wasn't here. Go ahead.
Okay, you can go ahead and
I'll concede to the group that you've gone over that. Go to the next question, ma'am.
Okay. What artifacts prove that Christianity gives Kemet information?
That would be for Kemet to answer. What proves Christianity has Kemet information? Is that the question?
So, a lot of these questions were designed for my teacher, who is not here.
Yes, sir.
So I didn't actually bring up that information.
Okay, so we'll go to the next question. Okay, was that the last question?
Was that the last question?
No, it was not. Just 1 second. Okay, our next question is, what is Christmas?
Okay, is that for a Christian or for a Kemetic person to answer?
We can go by groups. We can go with the Christians first, and then we'll ask Kemet.
Okay. What is Christmas as we celebrate it here in North America and Northern Europe? That's what I'm going to address. Okay. Christmas is a secular holiday that has ties to Christianity. It is not a Christian holiday except as Christians adopt it. It is to celebrate Jesus's birth for Christians, meaning that we don't really know when Jesus was born, we just picked a day. We did not tie it to any pagan religions. However, some of the pagan things that people commonly did is tied to Christmas, okay? Not to the Christianity part of Christmas. Christianity in a nutshell only says Jesus was born that day. We like the fact that Jesus was born. We think that this is the day and that's it. That's all Christianity has to do with Christmas. Now, as we celebrate it here with Santa Claus and the tree and the presents and all of that, that is things that we have done just to be happy, basically. But you have to separate it, because for Christians, the main thing is that Jesus was born into this world on some day. We just picked an arbitrary day and we're just glad that he was born.
And scholars believe that Jesus was born sometime in like June or July, I believe. But
there's other scholars that believe that he was born toward Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish tradition, and somewhere around, and I'm going to interject myself, I was born on September 26th, somewhere around that time frame. However, that's just personal conceit.
Okay.
All right, so kemetic standpoint, everyone knows this. I'm gonna make it real short because everyone is in agreement. And since there's no point of contention, we can move forward. So I'll just state that Christmas is an evolution of the celebration that we had in Kemet to celebrate a rebirth of the sun, and which is in reference to Horus, who was born on December 25th, who is the original savior of all mankind and savior of people so that they can move on to the afterlife.
Okay. Any more comments?
I'm gonna let Brother Bob answer. I'm gonna get off, fellas. I'm sorry. I gotta get up early in the morning. So peace, everybody. God bless. I'm out. Handle yourself.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Yep. You too, ma'am.
Thank you.
This may raise up a point of contention, ma'am. He said that Horus was the original savior. My question to him is, since he's a savior, what did he actually do to save anything?
In the mythology, when we're dealing with the winter solstice, we're talking about the movement of the sun. So everything links to the movement of the sun. The sun comes over and brings light to the darkness. It defeats the darkness. That's one way of understanding this, is that the sun out and it defeats the darkness. Horus is the light. Like they say about Jesus, the light, the lamb, all these other names, those names were still accredited to Horus as well. When you look at the Kemetic mythology, you see that the father, Osiris, is defeated by the darkness Set. And Horus comes and he defeats the darkness. And then the father Osiris goes to the underworld where he is, where it allows people who are living who pass on to gain entry into the world. So now, because of this mythological story, mankind can gain entry to everlasting life. It's the same story or a similar story of the Jesus Christ figure.
Okay.
Move forward, or
Defeated light is what you're telling me.
that's one aspect. There's layers to it. So the light defeats the darkness.
You know,
but in mythology, there's a story to it that goes along with it. So there's a story, and then there's a more logical way of looking at it.
Okay, I'm layers. If you notice, I'm really just skimming the surface, even though we're talking about deep things of Christianity. I'm keeping things on the surface so you can process this in your head. So basically, light. He defeated darkness, Horus, in the Kemetic mythology. And that's what I just wanted to understand. What did he do? And so, and then of course, we should understand, because Christianity is very popular in the United States, we understand what Jesus did do. So I don't have to go into it unless there's a question.
No, not at all. We can go to the next question.
Okay. What specific stories are found in Christianity that comes from Kemet?
You would have to ask a Kemetic person that.
Right, so there are many stories, there are many fundamental stories that are found in Kemet that are also found in the Bible.
excuse me, give an example of two so that I can see whether they're actually in Christianity.
A pep is an evil snake, where we have to kill the evil snake.
Okay.
Right?
Kill an evil snake. Okay, that's
we have the fields of reeds. The fields of reeds is the place that you go when you move on, when you pass, and you live there throughout eternity. Fields of reeds.
Okay. Now, do you know, and what two stories do they that you say are in Christianity that are like those?
A similar location to the fields of reeds would be one, heaven. It would be similar to heaven, and two, also it would be similar to the garden. They're both gardens.
Okay. Now, strictly speaking, and I'm going to be real strict here, the Garden of Eden is not a Christian story.
It's in the Bible.
I know it's in the Bible, but it's not a Christian story. A Christian story actually doesn't start until the book of Acts in the Bible, because Christianity doesn't start until the book of Acts in the Bible.
So Christians don't have a story of Adam and Eve?
The story of Adam and Eve is how all the world starts. It is included into our doctrine, but it's not a Christian story. So I'm going to be real specific here, and there's a reason for this, because we're talking about old and religion and all like that. The Adam and Eve story is actually a Judaism story. The Christians say, no, this is actually, we're with this because this actually happened. Actually does not start until after Jesus Christ dies.
Okay,
I have a question for you, Rob, on that.
Sir.
So Christ, yes, we get it. The Christian portion of the Bible starts at Christ, right?
But at Christ's death, not his life, but his ministry.
At his death, cool. So the point is that I'm curious on, though, that Jesus represents the God. He is a part of that God from the Old Testament, right?
He is, yes. He's part of the Godhead, part of the Trinity. You are correct.
I don't want to say like we splitting, having semantics here. So it may not be a part of actual Christianity in that sense, but if it's one and the same, then it's one and the same. You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but the reason why I'm going into this is because when you're starting to talk about this and the similarities, I'm going to go at that similarity point a little bit later, but I wanted him to understand when you talk strictly Christian, okay, you cannot, none of those stories are ascribed to Christianity.
But now, it's the same God, though. It's the same God.
Christianity, and that now I can get into, is that story similar to the Kemetic story of the story of killing the snake, the evil snake in the Garden of Eden? And the story is not similar because you have an evil snake, okay, and we call it a dragon, which is a different animal. We also, and I know that they depict the snake in the common things, but you got to be careful with what people depict commonly with the actual truth of the Bible. Because there's a lot of things that like a movie will show that they just can't duplicate, so they just do it the best they can. So it's actually a dragon, and then the dragon has spiritual implications of something behind it. It is not the actual dragon. So when God punished the dragon in the Garden of Eden, he was punished. He told Satan he's going to punish him later, and he told the physical being of the dragon, I'm going to punish you now. You will crawl on your belly, and that became snakes. And then the dragon, I'm going to crush your head, and that doesn't even happen until for the Christian view, until Jesus Christ dies on the cross. That's when he crushed Satan's head.
But as a student of like language and history, when things are adopted from one to the next, you don't ever expect it to be verbatim, word for word. there are only similarities. There are changes that are made when one culture adopts something from another. You would agree with that, right, Robert?
I'm in agreement when they adopt, but what I'm telling you is you have to show the adoption. And what
no,
I'm
of course. I'm not claiming it. I'm not claiming. Yeah, I'm not claiming the adoption. I'm simply speaking from a generic standpoint. Mm-hmm. that when you point out a difference, like a snake or a dragon, right, from the outside looking in, knowing the rules of how things transfer from one instance to the next, that doesn't even like bother me from a sense, if you understand what I'm saying, because those things that's how it works. You see what I'm saying? So that's why that don't even bother me.
What you're saying. But what I'm telling you is when you go to an original idea, that's why I spent so much time on cuneiform. We're talking about original culture of that region. Mm-hmm. That has nothing to do with Kemet because they have their own original culture. And then if you remember when I started this whole meeting and I started talking about the oldest religion and I started talking about all of that. So all of this hangs together because what I'm trying to show is Kemet has its own original ideas, generic to its culture. Israel, Judaism, in which Christianity comes out, has its own original ideas or culture. And so they didn't marry those up at all. And also, if you remember some of our conversations in the past, Kemet was God trying to connect to those people. And the Bible says that what they thought God was saying, they pushed it to four-footed beasts and started worshiping idols. And so God, in ancient times and Kemet's past, God of the Christianity Bible tried to connect with them. They did not understand his meaning. And so he left them and then eventually went to Abraham, who believed God and started a whole new thing. And so Kemet has nothing to do with Judaism or Christianity because they're two separate cultures. God tried to connect with them in our belief.
Let me ask you a question. Robert.
Yes, sir.
How important is the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the 3-day death and resurrection?
Very important.
It's central to your belief?
It is central to our belief of the 3 days, but the 3 days only has significance as far as showing that he actually died.
So to say that the culture doesn't influence another culture when we have a same 3-day death and resurrection, which is central.
Correct.
Listen, this is
Correct.
also just as critical and just as central to our system as it is to the Christian belief system. It's a critical. You cannot separate that. You cannot take out the death and resurrection, the 3-day death and resurrection from Kemet. You can also not take that out of Christianity without the whole thing unraveling.
But who died in Kemet? Who died and resurrected in 3 days?
The sun. It's in reference to the sun, correct?
It's in reference to the sun, the physical sun, which is a sign because God was trying to get your attention in antiquity. This is what I'm trying to listen to. What I'm trying to tell you. You did not understand the sign and started assigning your mythology to it. So God stopped dealing with Kemet, and this is before Abraham. And then eventually he started dealing with Abraham.
Let me explain to you why you're 120% incorrect in what you just said. There's no way around this. The sun doesn't die. Does the sun die?
No, sir, the sun does not die. Physically,
so this cannot be God showing us the death of the sun. This cannot be the sun dying. What actually happened was in the mind of men, he decided to create fictional stories. We could have created any kind of stories that we wanted to.
That's right. The Kemet decided to create fictional stories.
It is not in reference to God showing us anything. It's in reference to how we decided to describe. It's our description.
Right.
So God wasn't showing us anything.
Well, God is showing you because God made the whole universe, which Kemet is in agreement with, And any movement that is done, which is done at God's direction, which Kemet is in agreement with, it is showing you something. You decided it meant one thing, and this is what I was trying to say. And so God says, okay, they're not understanding me, so I'm going to stop dealing with them. I'll come back to them in a later time. I'm going to deal with somebody that understands me and believes what I say. And this started the Judaism religion, which is Abraham, which then evolved into Christianity.
So
God
you agree?
totally new. And that's the difference between Kemetic and Judaism and Christianity, is because God decided I cannot deal with the Kemetic people at this time in my belief system. I cannot deal with them in this time because they're not fully understanding what I'm having to say. So I'm going to go somewhere else, and then it eventually became Abraham.
I hear you, but basically you're in agreement that it's a Kemetic cultural thing, correct?
It's a cultural thing, and what I'm also trying to get you to really understand is that the cultures did not merge. The cultures did not contact. So if the cultures don't contact, okay, then there's not an adoption. In order for an adoption to be made, you have to contact. And so if you have no contact, there is no adoption. And
there's no way for you to say that they weren't in contact when I just showed to Brian while you were gone that there were different Kemetic posts in the Middle East on the other side of Canaan. So you can't say we weren't in contact when we ran those regions. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, let me ask you, what time did you run those regions?
Prior to the biblical writings, prior to the Bible being written on scriptures.
Okay, so prior to that, that would be, the Bible is written starting in Genesis, which is Moses, is written about 1400 BC. Okay,
that's fine. That's fine.
When it's written 1400 BC, it is original to just that. They didn't borrow from any other culture because what they were dealing with is God in their presence. And that's what the Bible actually means. They didn't care about any cultures that were around them. They rejected all the cultures around them. For example, the most famous story would be Balaam and the talking donkey. When another king sent Balaam out to curse the Israelites, and God stepped in and said, no, I don't want you to do that. You're going against me. And so Balaam had to relent. They did not do anything with any other culture.
That those posts were there.
Give me a second.
Well, understand. I'm not saying that the post wasn't there even earlier, but the contact had to be made.
If the people were there earlier, then that makes it possible for things to have passed down.
Well, the Israelites didn't contact anybody in the formation of their religion. They didn't care about anybody else.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm just trying to establish from a neutral position.
Right.
If the ability, not if it's true or not, if the ability was there.
The ability was because the posts are older or whatever. I'm not contending any of that. But what I am contending, and what I want people to really understand, is that in the Judaism religion, which evolved into the Christianity religion, since they actually had God in their presence, they didn't care what any other people believed. For example, the Canaanites believed in a total different God. They were right there with the Israelites in the land, because the Israelites actually took over Canaan. So they were right there. And so the land of Israel, the religion of Judaism, did not borrow anything from any other person, God, or culture, because they had their own. Now they fell out of favor with God. That's how come you have the idols that the brother pointed out in our last meeting, because God himself said, don't make any idols. So those are people that rejected God. But for people that believed in God and kept God, they didn't get it from no other place.
To be clear, you're saying that the Israelites never came from any previous cultures or belief systems. I'm not talking about Christianity, but those people didn't just come from themselves.
Well,
they had to have came from an earlier people.
Of course. we already established that Abraham came from Ur, so he is a Chaldean. However, the Chaldean religion has nothing to do with Judaism, because when Father Abraham believed God, God instituted a brand new religion there.
What I'm getting at is that the culture isn't isolated unto itself. It's an evolution. Exactly. It's an evolution from other religions, right?
Culture is not isolated to itself. They had the culture, but they didn't have the religion of Judaism.
But what comes with culture is belief systems.
It is a belief system as far as systems, as far as everything else. For example, in the American culture, we drive a car, but we have a Christianity religion that has nothing to do with driving a car.
But driving a car is not a belief system.
Had a culture. They planted crops in a certain way, generic to how the land was, because that's how you have to grow things. They had the culture of planting crops. They had the culture of pasture lands and stuff like that. They had that culture, but the religion of Judaism is original to the Hebrews, and they borrowed nothing from nobody else.
So I completely understand. They took everything from earlier people, right? Except for any spiritual religious belief whatsoever. These people had no beliefs, and then all of a sudden.
No, they had beliefs.
Okay, so what did they do? Like, those things have to carry over, right?
No, it did not.
Okay.
God instituted a brand new religion.
William, because that's kind of like not how history in any other area works. You know, I'm being told that this is a unique thing in which all of a sudden these previous belief systems all just stop, boom, done, and this new belief system wasn't influenced in any way whatsoever. Nowhere else around the world does that occur.
That is correct.
Well, you know what, I just want to read this little script. I know this is not really a point of contention is what he was saying, but just to be completely clear, let me go ahead and just read this really short little spurge really quick. Let's see if I can find it here. Okay, so this is Byblos, which is location. It's a location north in the Middle East, in the northern part of the Middle East. And it just says Byblos appears in as Kemet in Egyptian hieroglyphics recordings going back to the fourth dynasty. So fourth dynasty is a very long time ago. We're looking at 2600 BCE. So we have to understand when you guys say, "Oh, there was no contact; they couldn't travel." That's you can't say that. You guys got to stop saying that. And then in addition to that, let's just read here. The growing city was evidently a wealthy one, seems to have been an ally among those who were in the waters of Egypt.
Okay.
So we're talking about uniting the Middle East all the way back down into Africa. We had access to all of that region.
Okay, that region, because you're only talking about a portion of Africa, which is about, at the most, 1/8, because Africa is huge. However, Byblos, going for the Bible, I guess is what you're trying to connect. Correct me if I'm wrong later. Byblos only means a collection of books. Byblos was a city in Africa that had a lot of learning. And so Byblos, and that's really all the Bible actually is a collection of books. Abraham, Genesis, Exodus, all of those are books, and it's collected into a Bible, which goes through our cultural language. But it has nothing to do with Judaism as far as a belief system.
Byblos is not inside the continent of Africa.
Well, it's somewhere. It's a city somewhere, and it was a city of learning. And all Byblos goes into the Bible as a collection of books. That's all that means. That's what Bible actually means, a collection of books. We call it the Bible for our holy writings because we're saying these specific books. But you can say Bible when you write 4 or 5 theses for your college papers. You have written a Bible.
So let me give you a little history. The reason why it's called a Bible is because the main export in Byblos was paper.
Exactly.
It was papyrus, right?
Exactly.
That's why we call it the Bible, is because the region was called Byblos and the main export was paper. Right, that region of Byblos was a Kemetic
You
outpost.
understand?
That was us.
But
At
you
that
understand?
time, that was us.
Hold. Let me show you. If you write a college theme paper for your dissertation, for your doctorate, and you write a series of papers, that is a Bible. Okay? That's all Bible means. When we say the Bible, we're talking about a specific Bible that we have, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and on through the book of Revelation. It is a collection of books. Do not misconstrue that. Well, Bible, you can have, that's why we get the word bibliography that we use at the end of any serious research paper, which shows you.
The point that I'm making is that you're saying we didn't travel. You're saying it was difficult to travel. Hold on, listen to my point really quick, and then I'll let you go. So this map here, this is Egypt. This is ancient Egypt, okay? This is where Kemet would have been, right? Byblos is out here. Okay, Canaan would be like right here. Byblos is right here.
What year are you talking? What year are you talking, William?
The same year that you gave me that the Bible was written. You said 1450.
That's just a system of writings. And once again, that's just a system of writings. That's just a collection of books. That's what Byblos means. And
my point is that
your point is what?
These are Kemetic outposts at that time in those eras. The Kemetic people were here. This was our culture running Byblos.
I'm not contending that. My point is that the Bible, the specific collection of books were written with Israelites that had nothing to do with Byblos. Even though Byblos was there, they didn't go to Byblos not to write the Bible. So
what region was the scrolls found in?
So what I'm saying is the fact that the Byblos is there is fine. It's great. It's a collection of paper. It's a collection of papyrus. It's a collection of books. However, the specific Bible that we're talking about with Christianity originated with Judaism, which originated with the Israelites coming out of Egypt, which had nothing to do with no other culture for that belief system, because God instituted it basically with Father Abraham, which is only a family. Only 70 people went into Egypt under the Israelites. Okay, they became a nation under it in Egypt. And then when Moses came to Mount Sinai, that originated the law, which is
Deuteronomy. So let me ask you a question. The scrolls, was it found in that era?
What scrolls?
Biblical scrolls.
Which scrolls?
The scrolls that ended up being canonized. The canonized scrolls. Were they
wait, spell that so I can understand.
The scrolls that went into the Old Testament.
Okay, the scrolls that went into the Old Testament, which is Genesis, basically the Torah, Genesis, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers, and Exodus. 5 books. That's the original Torah. Listen to me. That's the original Torah. It is written by Moses. It is written by Moses in communication with God, which is happened at the Mount Sinai. It had nothing to do with nobody else.
Where were the scrolls found, is the question.
When was the scrolls found?
What region was the scrolls found in? What area?
What scrolls?
Why are you going back to what scrolls? We've already established which scrolls. What region were the scrolls that you're talking about were found in?
The region is Canaanite, Israelites.
Ah, okay.
That's the region. But they weren't found there. They were written there.
Okay. Where is Canaanite here?
Yes, it's there. That's not the point of contention.
Who was here? What culture was here during that time?
It doesn't matter, because Judaism wasn't there. Judaism was not there. Nothing part of Judaism. That's what I'm trying.
The Kemetic culture. The Kemetic culture was here.
There. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
You don't think that matters? That matters at all in his belief system, bro?
Not in Judaism belief system pertaining to God. No, it does not matter whatsoever, because Moses wrote those books. Actually, and then the book of Joshua, which comes after the 5 books, going into the rest of the Old Testament, all of that is contained in Israel. They're not found outside of the culture of Israel, okay, or the Judaism system until later. It is not based on any other books. They could care less about any other books. You have to understand the Judaism people, or Jews, to just name a people, could care less about what anybody else thought. Okay.
You know what's on my mind right now is that the Moses, is it possible? Because in the Bible it says that that it's inspired by God. So I'm wondering, is it possible that Moses, because he could go anywhere he wanted to, he was like the Prince of Egypt, would it be possible for him to have gone into the pyramids and gotten some of that information out of there and written it in the Torah?
No. It is possible for him to go into the pyramids because, of course, he could travel, okay, especially in the region of Kemet or Egypt. It's possible for him to go there. However, all of the information that he got to go into the Torah or the 5 books or the Bible, as we're talking about, came from God. It did not come from any other culture.
But it says it was inspired by God.
Well, God did not go to Kemet to get anything. God started a brand new thing. Brand new. It has nothing. There was no temple worship like the temple worship that is in the Judaism law. There's no temple worship like that. They can't even construct, because in order to construct idols in other religions, you have to use stone cutting tools. God specifically said, no, I don't want you to do that in Judaism. He said, you got to do it by hand, to put rocks up and build an altar. And so,
all right, so as long as we're very
careful, you have to be very, very careful, because it seems like, and I understand it, because it seems like they borrow stuff from other cultures. It makes sense. However, when you look at the unique properties of Judaism and how it actually started, they took nothing from no other place.
Who is Elohim?
That's hard to understand. I understand it's a claim.
It seems that way, but that's because that's how human history has worked everywhere else.
Right.
When a culture leaves one place and goes to another, or exchanges people, or there's intermixing, things merge, things adopt, things evolve, things change.
Yeah, that's similar. That is 100% true. However, what I'm trying to say is the belief system of Judaism, and stick with that. I'm not talking about whether they use salt to pay people, because you know that's where the word salary came from, okay? And our pay system, it came actually from salt. That was a commodity. I'm not saying all the commodities and trade and culture, all of that merged. There is no question in anybody's mind. That is not the point of contention. The point of contention is the specific belief system of Judaism and how God deals with his people, with people in general. God didn't care whether you was, let me put it this way, make it simple for you. Once Judaism started with Moses and the law, there was only 2 categories for people in the whole world. You were either Jewish or you was an unbeliever, period. They didn't take anything in their belief system from any other place. And in order, what the Jews were supposed to do, according to Exodus and Mount Sinai instructions, was they were supposed to stick with God and evangelize the rest of the world. They took it to the extreme and just said, we're going to stick with God and be our own people. There was supposed to be a nation of priests, and that is shown in the book of Jonah, when Jonah didn't want to go to the city of Nineveh, which was a Gentile city, which means not a Jewish city. He didn't even want to preach the word of God, even though God told him to do it. That's how insulated they were. In Peter's time, in the book of Acts, for going up through time, it was illegal for a Jew to enter into a non-Jewish person's house. It was illegal. That means it was against the law. And so when he went to the Roman centurion Cornelius, he actually broke Jewish law. It was illegal for him to eat with a non-Jewish person. We have to understand what's going on here. Judaism is a unique religion belief system. It borrowed nothing from nobody else because God says, this is how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to get Judaism. I'm going to save humanity through Judaism, which is what eventually happened with Christianity. The main reason why Jesus died is because Jews thought that he broke the law by claiming that he was God, which he didn't because he was. And that's what he proved by being resurrected. And that's what happened with the 5,000 people in Acts that started to believe when Peter preached that, hey, he is still alive. And then that evolved into Christianity.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
We don't want to be prolonging this too much longer, and I have a few more questions to go. Is it okay if you guys sum up what you're saying and I can move to the next question?
I read the remaining questions. I think we just covered one of these questions, the number 10 there, and then we'll wrap it up because as we've been speaking, we've actually gone over all the rest of this information.
Okay, I had a problem with my computer.
So that question is about Easter. What is Easter?
Okay. I'll answer that as a Christian. The history of Easter, as we celebrate it here in America, and that we're familiar with, is actually two parts. You have the Easter Bunny and all of that, and Isis and all of that. That is separate from Christianity. Christianity, Easter only celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We say that he rose up on that day and he is alive evermore. An actual person in a physical body that you can touch that has spiritual connotations because Jesus go in and out the spirit world as a physical body. He arose after death. That's what Easter means in a nutshell.
Okay, so to push this, we know that Easter was a celebration before Jesus died and resurrected, right?
No, Easter was not. There was a ceremony doing, but the Easter does not start until Jesus actually dies and rises on the day. Everything else is something culture comes into. And culture is a part, when we already said the culture merges and marries. But the Christianity Easter, in a nutshell, in its purest form, only means Jesus rose on that day and he is alive evermore in a physical body.
Okay, so you're saying the name, is it the word Easter that you're talking about, or is it, what about Easter wasn't previous to Jesus?
There was no Easter previous to Jesus. There was other forms of this, but there is no Easter previous to Jesus.
Okay, so the original Easter originated with the name of the ancient goddess and gods. The veritable Betty, back in 272 through 737 CE. A Christian scholar first asserted in the book De Raton Temporum that Easter was named after Estra.
Could have been. However, Easter in its purest form, once again, does not go back to Estra, does not go back to that. All it does the resurrection of a physical body, specifically Jesus. Has nothing to do with nothing else.
Robert, just curious. It seems to me like you start these things with your belief, but you're not recognizing the connection with previous things. Even I understand your personal belief has nothing to do with those and what you believe, but I'm talking about the historic connection. You don't see that?
I see where people have used culture in order to try to do it and understand. But And I understand that culture. But what I'm telling you is the core belief of a Christian. No matter how much
y'all don't believe that it's connected to that. I get that. That's apparent. I don't think that's in contention, bro. I'm not talking about what y'all believe. I'm talking about outside of that, right?
Well, when you talk about
evolution of information, I understand that a Christian doesn't believe that it's connected to anything, because then it would undermine your belief, right?
No, it would not undermine. We understand that it comes from Estra and all that, and the goddess.
Okay, so, but you said it didn't. You said it didn't.
That culture. We understand that culture. Understand what I'm trying to tell you. The cultural aspects of it, what it's named for, and all like that. We understand all that. However, Easter goes to a specific event, namely the rising early on the first day of the week. That is a specific event. It is celebrated for just that specific event. It has no connection to nothing else, no matter what it's named for, because we understand the culture and people's minds. They cannot, basically, people cannot take the whole truth of God and just be with it. They had to name it something. And so they named it Easter. And that's what
let me have the floor for a moment so I can give some information, some cultural
I'm
information.
not contending that any information you're given, William, listen to me. Any information you're given, I'm not contending none of that.
Okay, that's great. Let me give the information.
All of the cultural information that you got about the name and all of that, of that is true. Even if it wasn't true, I'm going to say it's true. However, what I am saying, and this is the key part that I want you to get, what I am saying is that the specific event of the resurrection on that first day of the week has nothing to do with anything else, because that's a specific event. It was prophesied in the Old Testament. I can go to Old Testament and talk about how that comes about. But the specific event of Easter, the resurrection day, as my daddy calls it, okay, and as old Christians tend to call it, has nothing to do with nothing else.
Okay, can I have a moment to speak, though?
Yes, sir, you can.
Okay, all due respect, you've spoken for a while, and I got a lot of information to give you.
Go ahead.
And I would like to get through some of this information. So the day of Easter moves. The reason why the day of Easter moves is because it's a celestial holiday. Christmas is based on the sun. Let me just get through. Christmas is based on the sun. Easter is based on the moon. Easter is the first Sunday after a full moon, after the spring equinox. That's how we determine what day Easter is going to fall on every year. And
no, sir, that's incorrect.
Yeah, so today, that's the day Easter falls on. So that is
incorrect. That is
okay,
incorrect.
It was okay. Well, let me get through this information. I've already asked. Right? So in the they still have something that we call a tekken. A tekken is a symbol of Osiris' genitals, his penis. The symbol, let me pull up what a tekken looks like. What we call it? Obelisk. Obelisk. Okay, so a tekken is a huge part of the Kemetic mythology, and it is Osiris' penis.
Okay.
Go ahead and share this. And I'll tell you exactly how this ties into Easter. So when the mythology of Osiris took place, they didn't find his penis. He was cut up into 14 pieces. They couldn't find his penis. So they built one and they shaped it as this shape. Now this symbol is all around the world. Any place where a government wants to show that they're an authority or have power, you will see this symbol. Washington, D.C., you'll see this symbol. At the Vatican, you'll see this symbol symbolizing power, right? That's what they're using as our ancient symbols.
Okay.
The reason why it's tied into Easter is, one, it's Osiris' penis. When he died and he was resurrected, they created this symbol. That's when this symbol came into creation. And more modern times, they put this symbol in the center of the Vatican Square, and they used it as a sundial, which helped them determine when Easter was going to occur. As well, they have this symbol in other churches in other areas of the world, using it as another sundial to help them determine when Easter was going to occur. However, the very first resurrection—
That's not how Easter is determined.
It's not determined that way today. It's not determined that way today. But what I'm saying is that this is the original. That's why these Tekken or Tekkenu are placed in different areas. It's based on our Kemetic
antiquity either.
That is how it was done in antiquity. Yes, it was. The Vatican has a sundial based on this Tekken.
No, they had a sundial to make a calendar. However, Easter is not even tied to the Judeo-Roman, the Roman calendar that we use, that we had to correct with Pope Gregory, I do believe.
It's in reference to the first resurrection.
Use today. We used to use the Julian calendar. Now we use the calendar that is corrected, and it is accurate to today. However, the reason why Easter moved is because it is connected to the Judean calendar, which is a total different calendar.
Green screen in the back.
Because if you would notice, Easter follows with Passover, and that's a total different calendar. That's how come Easter moved. It moves from March to April.
Real quick, Robert, does Easter, I understand what you're saying, but does Easter actually happen as what he claimed after that first full moon?
No, it does not. It does not happen.
It says Easter falls on the first Sunday after the first moon date, based on a mathematical calculation that falls on or after March 21st. If the full moon is on a Sunday, Easter celebration is on that following Sunday, although Easter is liturgically related to the beginning of the spring in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's telling you at the spring equinox. That's what it is. It's the first full moon after the spring equinox. That's how Easter is determined. Okay? And the symbols that are being used is not for Jesus's resurrections, it's for Osiris resurrections. It's Osiris resurrection that you're celebrating, that created the celebration of Easter.
Jesus is tied to the Passover of Judaism, which is a whole different calendar. They use the moon because Judaism uses the moon, okay? And Judaism, once again, has nothing to do. I understand about the celebration of the phallic symbol and all that, but I could pile up bricks. In order to pile up bricks, you need a wide base and a narrow top. I can get a phallic symbol out of that. That's what the pyramids go into, basically. So just because something is common, just because the culture has it, when you talk about Christianity, which is what we're talking about a specific event that actually happened according to eyewitnesses. Has nothing to do with no other event, because there was no other event. We could care less whether the guy got cut up into 14 pieces and then they could find everything but his penis. We could care less about that because we don't care about that. That has no ties to Judaism. It has no ties to Christianity. It is a fact that happened in their mythology. It is a fact of that. It's a fact that people use obelisks and things of that nature because it's just pretty. Okay, the Eiffel Towers are very pretty. You know, the Statue of Liberty is very pretty. We use these types of things. However, for Christianity, it is a specific event and it happened one time. Excuse me.
I find a common theme in here, William. I'll be honest with you. He struggles to separate his belief from some historical data. And that's why, I mean, it literally makes no sense to say, well, my Christian belief is not tied. It has nothing to do with that. Well, of course it doesn't, because your belief system is based on this information. You know what I mean? But like, you got to take a step back to see the connection. If you don't take that step back, then you'll never see any connection. It's really a fault there. I promise it. You got to separate the belief from the information, and then see. That's the only way to see the connection, Robert.
Well, I see the connections that you guys are making. And
no,
and
but when you say Christianity has nothing to do. When you say, but Robert, hear my point. Hear my point. Just hear my point for a second, because you had stepped away. If you say Christianity has nothing to do with this previous thing, of course it doesn't, because your belief doesn't have anything to do with that, right? But the claim is there a connection? You got to take a step back from your belief, brother, to even see it.
The claim is that there's a connection. However, what I'm telling you is this, okay? If I understand the connections that everybody is making, and I do. However, if the claim that I'm making has no connection with those connections, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
But that's almost irrelevant to that, though.
It is not. It is not.
It is because of course let's hypothetically say that there is a connection and that it did evolve from one to the next. Of course.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we lost you. We lost you.
You're on mute.
I think I'm going to finish this thought.
You get what I'm saying?
No, we lost you. I'm going to try to finish your thought, though. I believe I can guess. You're saying hypothetically, let's say there is a connection. Then there would be a connection because we would take it from there, hypothetically. What I'm saying is all of the cultural connections that you guys are making are valid points. We're not contending none of that. However, since I'm talking about a specific event that has nothing to do with nothing else in history, Jews don't even believe in what Christians believe in. The Judaist religion does not believe in what Christians believe in. They're still waiting for the Messiah to come. We say he's already came in the person of Jesus. He died for our sins. That is a Christian thought that has nothing to do with no other thought in the world.
Can I speak for a moment? Can I speak for a moment? Don't cut me off, out of respect. Give me just
I'm going to give you as much time as I can.
All right. So we have established in this conversation that a central part of the Christian belief is the 3-day death and resurrection of Savior. We've established that.
No, we haven't established that.
Wait, hold on. I was speaking. We have established that the central part of Christianity is the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's the central part. That's all I'm saying.
That's okay.
Savior, right. So we also established that in ancient times, well before Jesus was ever born, that same concept was a central part of the Kemetic culture. We've also established that the Kemetic culture is heavily tied into Christmas. It's not as heavily tied into Christianity, but it's more tied into Kemet than it is Christianity, being that it's in reference to the sun, the winter, the spring, the winter solstice, and the death and resurrection of our Savior, which is Horus,
right,
who was associated with the sun. We've also established that Easter, which is claimed to be the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, has been something that's been done before Jesus was born in Kemet, based on the death and resurrection of Osiris. So these are really strong ties, and these are fundamental principles in both systems.
But they're different. The Kemetic system is a different system. Even though it's similar, it's a different system. If I was a Kemetic believer, like you are, I would not want to tie anything that Jesus Christ does to the Kemetic system because it has nothing to do with it. If you are a true Kemetic believer, there's nothing that Jesus did. As a matter of fact, you could care less what Jesus did because it has no value in the Kemetic system. There is no value for what Jesus does in the Kemetic system because you're going with the God Horus. None.
And what you're doing right there is exactly what I'm trying to point out, bro. It's not about that it has, okay. If I were to take stories from the Bible and change it and create my own belief system, right? I'm going to literally say, oh no, that stuff from the Bible don't have nothing to do with it. My belief system is unique upon itself because it does this, it does that. It has, I'm not drawing upon that, but that's not really what the conversation is, right? We know that you're not going to say the resurrection from Kemet. It has anything to do with Jesus.
That proves the point. If you was to take Bible stories and change them, then they're no longer Bible stories.
But that's not the point. But then how do you establish
if a person could say, okay, I can trace your story lineage to that, and then they will have to admit, okay, I changed the stories from the Bible. However, the Bible does not claim anything of that. The Bible does not claim anything to do with anybody else.
100% accurate,
what I'm
right?
telling you is the fact that if you're a Kemetic believer, then whatever Jesus Christ does, whether he rose from the dead or not, does not matter to you because you're basing your belief on Heru.
It's an irrelevant point, Robert. It's
irrelevant because Jesus Christ has nothing to do with Heru.
It's a given based on your belief. Now step back from belief and just talk.
You're believing in Heru, which is a savior through light. Jesus Christ is not a savior through light. Jesus Christ has nothing to do with Heru. The 3 days only means that he was dead.
To establish a connection, you have to step outside. You have to step outside your belief to just look at.
I'm stepping outside of my belief. I'm stepping into.
You're not, because you keep
saying. If I'm a believer of Kemet, I don't care what Jesus Christ does.
Of course, but that's not history. You're still talking about your belief.
If I'm a historically believer of Kemet, it doesn't matter.
Belief. Forget the belief. Forget belief.
It's like, okay, look, if I'm a believer of Christianity, I'll go back to my religion. I could care less what Abraham Lincoln does.
I think you keep making
Robert. It's in our culture. I could care less because it has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing.
Robert, do you understand anthropology? Do you understand what anthropology is?
I understand that, and I don't.
No. Just hold on. Let me. I just asked a question. You understand
what anthropology very well.
So what happens when an anthropologist goes in? What they're recording is independent of their own belief, right?
Correct.
So when you're looking at this, you keep mixing the belief with just the outside view of the historical connection.
No, I'm not mixing
every time you start your sentence. Every time you start it.
Wait. Let me go again because you're not understanding the point that I'm making.
Go ahead and repeat yourself. You tell me why the Christian belief doesn't care about the Kemet thing. You're going to talk about the belief.
No, if I'm an anthropologist, which means I don't believe in Christianity at this point. Yep. At this point, I could care less whether Jesus Christ died or not.
Yep.
Because I'm not speaking as a Christian. I'm speaking as a strict scientist of anthropology.
Perfect.
And I'm going to study the anthropology of the religion of Christianity.
Yep.
Okay? That's all I'm studying is the history of Christianity. I could care less about what anything else does if it does not relate to the history of Christianity.
Wrong.
I'm studying Christianity.
Then what you're setting up
does not relate to Christianity.
Robert, this is what you're saying. All I'm going to focus in on is the Christianity belief that will never, ever, ever allow you to see a connection. Do you understand that?
No.
What? If you only are focusing on the Christian belief, you'll never, ever, ever, ever be able to see any connection with a different belief.
I understand. That's what I'm saying.
So do you understand that point, right? Do you understand that point?
But listen to me. I'm taking belief out of it. Right now, I'm not speaking as a Christian.
You're not taking belief out of it.
Of the Christian religion.
Okay.
As a person that understands the history of Christian religion with no belief whatsoever, I have to look at where Christian gets his ideas.
Yep.
Where Christian got the idea of the resurrection. And the idea of the resurrection for the Christian belief comes from a specific event. And I'll give you this example to make you understand what I'm talking about.
Isolating the view to just
I'm not isolating the view. I'm not isolating the view. I'm actually expanding it to see whether it comes from anything else.
A Christian view is never going to be identified with that lens that you're looking through. I'm telling you,
looking through the lens of a Christian.
Let me ask a question. Which resurrection comes first? Jesus' resurrection or Osiris?
As far as history of religions, the other resurrection of Osiris. Okay. It comes first. But that has nothing to do with the Christian resurrection, even though that came first. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. You're trying to say, well, this resurrection came first, so obviously Jesus came from that. No, because the Christian religion, historically, anthropology, as a scientist, as a neutral person, I'm going to step into the persona of Michael here. The Christian reality goes to a specific event that nobody knew was going to happen.
If you're stepping into the role of me,
listen to this. Watch this.
Robert, but you said my name. If you're stepping into my role and I'm saying the opposite of what you're saying, you're not stepping into my role.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm speaking as a persona of a.
So why am I saying what I'm saying?
You're saying that you see connections.
No. I'm not saying that there is a connection. I'm simply saying how can one identify a connection if they isolate and say this Christian belief system has nothing to do with this other one? Of course it doesn't. If you're just saying this Christian believes it because of this, you'll never ever see a connection. You're not seeing it from the outside in, bro.
If I'm looking from the outside in,
yes.
Okay, that means that all religions everywhere are valid because we're talking about beliefs. If I look at all of them and I see all the various resurrections, because there's a lot of religions that have a resurrection story. Okay, just to be honest, if you ever study world religions, there are
several with very quick question.
Right. So we understand that. However, listen to what I'm telling you here. And this is a question I'm going to give you. And if you answer this question, you'll see what my point. The Christian religion is actually a surprise to Judaism, which Christian religion came out of, because nobody knew that Jesus was going to resurrect. They predicted it, but they didn't understand that that was going to be this specific person. If they did, then how come the disciples wasn't at the tomb on the third day? And I'm going to give it even further. If you go into Luke chapter 18, I do believe verses 31, but I don't have my Bible here with me. Jesus specifically said that he was going to rise up on the third day. And the very verse after he specifically says, I'm going to die and be rose again on the third day, the very next verse in the Bible says, and the disciples understood none of this because it was hid from them. Because
let me ask you something. I understand you're talking about biblical scripture, but let me ask you, who was born December 25th, which is Christmas, Jesus or Horus?
You're saying Horus. Jesus is supposedly born there. Nobody actually knows the day.
Nobody believes Jesus is born December 25th. I've never heard that. No one believes Jesus is born.
That's what I'm just got through saying. Nobody knows the exact day. Nobody.
But Horus was born December 25th on Christmas Day, the day you celebrate Jesus' birthday.
Well, we just celebrate. We just picked the day. That's what I'm saying. We don't know that he was born.
Wait, Robert. You think that day just is coincidental?
Understand? I understand that.
You think that day is coincidentally celebrated on the same day as the birth date of Horus? You think that's a coincidence?
No, I didn't say coincidence. I said out of the culture, we picked that day. That's your connection.
Why was the day picked? Why was the day picked?
They picked that day because the day was as good as anybody else as far as the Christian pure sense. We know he was born someday. So culturally,
it was a coincidence. You're saying it's a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. They picked it, so it's not a coincidence. It was done by design. It's not a coincidence. Coincidences are not done by design. It was done by design. However, that's the connection that you guys are seeing, and I see it too. However, in the strictest sense of when Jesus Christ was born, Actually, Christians don't celebrate his birth as far as a birthday, period. We don't care what day it was. We just love the fact that he was born.
I understand that, but you celebrate his birth.
Well, I understand all that connection. That connection is not disputed in my mind.
Okay,
I'm not disputing those connections. Understand?
Hear me out.
Connections are valid as far as connections go to culture. But as far as religion goes, it is not valid to the Christian.
Hold on. I'm not saying that. You're worried about trying to make the connection not valid. And I'm simply just asking for.
I'm trying to validate the connection.
This isn't my belief. I'm not trying to validate it, bro.
No, I know you're not. You're just saying a connection with
I'm asking from a skeptical standpoint, right?
I'm
asking a skeptic. I'm a skeptic. This is not my belief, but I am saying coincidence when you're trying to identify two things.
Right.
Either it's a coincidence that these two dates are the same, right? Or there's a reason that they're the same.
There's a reason why they're the same. Okay. I'm not disputing the reason.
The reason why they're the same, William is saying because it comes from that, right?
All the cultural reasons and all those connections that all of you guys are making are valid. However, for the Christian point of view, strictly speaking, we could care less what day Jesus Christ was born.
There you go, mixing it again.
I'm not mixing it up. I'm not mixing it up. All those connections that you made are valid connections. You understand that? They're valid.
Robert, real quick.
What?
Do you expect for me to hear you say from the Christian belief, it's picked because the birth date of Horus? I would never expect for you to say that.
I can say that. I can say
that. But you wouldn't, because that's not the Christian belief on the date, right?
Yeah, because the Christians don't know what day.
That's why I keep saying you're mixing your belief.
My message. The message that William is saying is that it comes out of. And I'm saying all of those come out of are valid. If you could point a connection to the Hindu religion, I could care less, because it would be a valid connection for the culture. But for the Christian belief, as far as what day he was actually born,
you're doing the same thing.
You make all right. Let me chime in. Give me just 2 minutes to state this, because we've been going and I've got some new information I want to go ahead and throw into the pot. I'm gonna share my screen really quick. I'm just gonna read 3 scriptures, and then I'm gonna end my turn, and then we'll go ahead and go into our closure, or you guys can rebut off the scriptures I read. I've got 3 scriptures here. Hosea 13:4. Yet I am the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt. It says, I am the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt, and thou shalt know no God but me, for there is no Savior but besides me. That's the first scripture. So the Bible claims, and I understand there's a way of reading it differently, but that's exactly what it says. The Bible claims that he is from Egypt. Now let's go to the next scripture here. See if I can move this down. Come on, baby. Next scripture here. Psalms 48:11. For the Lord thy God is a sun and a shield. So he's speaking metaphorically, but you can see that he's saying he is a sun. S-U-N, not S-O-N. And I understand you can read that in certain ways, and it can mean certain things to you, but it literally says, this is literal, Lord God, thy God is a son, and he's from Egypt. Last scripture, then go ahead and take it over, Robert. Revelations 13:4. Unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans writes, these things says the Amen. Amen. How can Amen speak? These things says the Amen. Now we know who Amen is. We know the only Amen that can speak is the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt, who is the Son. It literally is the Son, God from Egypt, who can say these things. Okay, I'll go ahead and let you have it.
All right, we'll start with the last one, which is the book of Revelations. I do believe you said 3, and the verse, chapter 3. But if you follow Revelations chapter 2 and 3, which is the letters to the churches, you'll notice that it's called by different names. So to zero in on the Amen as far as a name or a title is categorically wrong, because God is more than that. So just to zero in on the Amen and leave all the other scriptures behind, because this is the one that holds the sun and the arrows in his hand. It's a whole bunch of different, every time he talks to a different church, he has a different title or name. So just to zero in on the Amen would be categorically wrong. Now now go to the Psalms. God is a son, okay? What he's talking about there is he is a son because he made the son. Everything is contained in him. To go into Hosea, out of the land of Egypt. God is more than just out of one land, okay? He is talking about how they came as far as Israel, how he brought them out of Egypt. So to zero in on these few scriptures, and that is why a lot of times, just because you have a fact, you have to be careful what conclusion it leads you to. You have to take the Bible in its totality. You have to take Christianity in its totality and see where it actually came from. Cultural rise, all the connections that you guys have made are valid connections. Don't get me wrong. However, for the core Christian belief, speaking as a scientist, if I didn't believe in Christianity, I have to say that they got it from a specific event that nobody knew was going to happen. Otherwise, the disciples would have been at the gravesite waiting on Jesus to return, and they didn't. They had to run there later because they had no idea that Jesus was going to come back up.
Let me ask you, Robert, do you agree that Amen, the Kemetic Amen, we're not talking about the Christian Amen, we're talking about the Kemetic Amen, is a representative of the sun?
Yeah, because that's a Kemetic belief.
Right,
but it has
nothing to
do with the Christian belief.
I'm not making that claim right now, but we're just saying that Amen Ra is a son, the son.
According to Kemet.
And according to the Bible, the Lord, your God, is a son as well. The son.
He is the sun, he is the moon, he is everything according to the Bible.
So we're in agreement that he's the son though, right? He is the son. The Lord your God is the son.
Spell the word son.
S-U-N.
No, he is not the son.
It says, Psalms 48:11 says, for the Lord thy God is a son.
Is a son. Is a son. Listen to what the wording is. And we're going to stick with that.
Right?
No, S-U-N is a son. That doesn't mean he is the son specifically, and only that. That's what the means. A means he is something of one, of many. And that is what the difference is.
Well,
you cannot say,
forms, right?
I cannot put God in a box and say he is the son.
And you said that Amen is a son, right? According to Kemet, Amen is a son?
Yeah, I would imagine actually if I really understand Kemet the way I think I do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Amen Ra is the son.
Okay, so now in the scripture it says, these things says the Amen. Amen. Who is this Amen person that this Bible is talking about? Is it my Amen? Is it Kemetic Amen?
No, it is not.
What Amen is this?
This Amen is a portion of the total Godhead. Because like I said, if you read in the Bible of 2 and 3, which has 7 churches listed. And each church, he describes himself differently.
Different ways, yes, I read that.
Amen, and say that is God, that is the same thing, is totally false, because obviously, if he describes himself as a different thing for another church, then he's that plus that.
I agree,
At the minimum, you should say, according to Christian belief, at the minimum, you could say this. You could say that Amen Ra in the Kemetic and God plus something else.
Okay, that's fine. But you're in agreement that this Amen is not my Amen. This Amen is your God, right? That's what we're agreeing on. That's not my Amen, is your God.
Yeah, because actually, Understand what I'm saying?
That this Amen.
I want to make sure, because you're going into a specifically that is not quite the truth. It is that Kemet God, Amun-Ra. It is Heru. It is when I say that particular God plus everything else, that's what I mean.
Let me ask another question.
It's just the Kemet God.
Robert, where does my Amen, who's the son, where does he come from?
Yeah, my God includes all that.
No, but I'm asking a different question. The Kemetic Amen, where does that Amen come from? What land does the Kemetic Amen come from? What is that land called?
It's called whatever it's called in Kemet.
Okay, what is it called today?
I don't know. Whatever it was called in Kemet.
It's called Egypt. Today we call that land Egypt. Hosea 13:4 says, "Yet I am the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt." My Amen is from Egypt. Your Amen is from Egypt. They're both claiming to be the son.
No. My God is more than just from Egypt. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. You cannot.
Robert, real quick, I have a question.
Yes,
do you expect that the connections are meant to be verbatim? Because we agreed earlier that that's not how things usually evolve. So you keep identifying, like you keep dismissing what he's saying because you're adding more, but you already agreed that when connections evolve and you see from A to B, that B isn't going to be the same as A.
That's understood. That's cultural. That's anthropology 101.
Yes. So when do you think because yours came second?
Understand this. This is what I'm saying. All of anthropology 101, all of the connections that you guys are making are valid connections. What I am saying is that Christianity, being an original thought, is tied to specific original events that have nothing to do with no other culture, has nothing to do with no other connection. That's what I'm saying.
I understand your belief.
I understand the outside view.
I understand what your belief is, but that's not
my belief. Not my belief. I'm speaking as a scientist.
Yeah, but you can't. But a scientist would never say that.
As a scientist,
an independent scientist with no agenda is not going to say that.
Yes, he would.
No, they're not going to eliminate the possibility of a connection when he's literally pointing out these things, and it's already understood that the evolution could occur.
Not an evolution to a specific event, because the event is the originator of the whole belief system. That event.
What event? What specific event? What specific event?
The specific event that he rose on the third day after the Passover of his crucifixion.
Hey, now we're going to set that event aside, and we're going to set that event aside.
Okay, right? Set that event aside.
Because right now we're talking about the sun, Amen, and Egypt.
Right.
That's not. We're going to put that event aside.
Okay, put that event aside.
You see that connection and you acknowledge it, right?
No, I do not, because
I didn't say you acknowledge it's true. You acknowledge that there's a connection, not that it's true.
No, I'm not acknowledging. I'm not worried about the truth of it. What I'm saying is you're trying to connect something to God, which is more than just a specific type of deal. Whenever you talk about God, he is more than a specific. So
I'm gonna ask you a different question. I'll be done with.
Will be a part.
How would you establish? Let's say that these two are connected. This is a hypothetical.
Okay.
How would you establish that?
The way to establish that they would be connected, and what do you want to connect?
Let's just talk about these three things that he's pointing out. Let's say that these biblical verses actually. Real quick, let me get it out so we understand.
Okay.
These biblical verses actually are drawing. This is the truth, right? In this hypothetical, that those three things are drawing from the Kemetic system.
And how would I prove that? Are you ready?
Yes.
This is how you would prove it.
Mm-hmm.
In order to prove it, you would have to throw away all the other descriptions of God.
No,
and only those.
Wrong. Because
Yeah.
you already, no, listen to me. You already are aware that what comes second is not going to be verbatim, right?
We understand that. However, when you go into a specific type of place, that has to be the same place. Even
Nothing
though
has to be identical when you borrow from something.
Kemetic are two separate words, right?
But listen,
Kemet and Egypt are two separate words, right?
Robert, when I plagiarize one thing, I change it up. Somebody to plagiarize doesn't mean that, oh, because it doesn't have this same thing or these identical properties that I didn't plagiarize, right? So I'm asking a specific question and you're not answering it. You're trying to say why it's not true.
I think we're about at time. But I mean, I have a 1,000 more different things that we can actually get into. So we have to do this again. We can,
yes, sir. A little bit more lead time so I can make sure I'm prepared.
Yeah, that definitely. Well, I think we had 2 weeks on this one. We got this information out 2 weeks back. But,
I'm sorry, I wasn't following.
We can set the next one out for 2 weeks. So be prepared in 2 weeks. I actually wanted to get into is the Bible evil? That's the topic I really wanted to get into. But,
we can discuss that next time.
Yeah, we can get into that. But I had a great time. I think, Michael, you've been really good at being a go-between and in-between, a bipartisan person here.
Yes.
I definitely appreciate your presence.
Thank you. I appreciate you for inviting me. For those that don't, you normally see my face, I have my son with me, so I was silent some of this, so I apologize for that part. But I always, I just want everybody to know I'm neutral. I don't hold the belief of either side. And I'm not saying either is true or false. It's not about that. I'm just here from an intellectual standpoint of trying to connect the dots. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Fantastic. Robert, did you want to say something before we close? We're going to call that a night, I guess. Good night, everybody.